All right, welcome to tonight's City Council meeting for February 2nd, 2026. We have two study session topics for tonight. Our first one is discussion on the changes to 2024 building and fire codes in preparation for adopting the code changes. And we have Chief Building Official Karen Montanez and Fire Marshal Mike Smith here to provide information. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. So we're here to propose the 2024 International Building and Fire Codes. Recommend the process just to stay current with building codes, building safety, and new technology that has been out for integrated code adoptions and code changes. We also have an interagency agreement with the City and County of Denver. So we have 6 months from when Denver Fire adopts their code cycle for us to adopt it. They adopted in 2024. It went to council June of 2025. June of 2025, and went into effect December 31st, 2025. The proposed codes are basically all of them, from international building code, fire code, residential code, plumbing, mechanical, fuel, energy, and existing building code, property maintenance code, and swimming pool and spa code. I know nothing about that. Other jurisdictions that recently adopted the 2024 international codes are Boulder, Golden, Littleton, Thornton, and Denver. I know South Metro, since they have a lot of jurisdiction over like Parker and DTC in Arapahoe County, they are looking at going to the newest code cycle as well, but they have not yet.
As part of the code adoption process, it's done every 3 years at an international level. Code changes are submitted by code officials, architects, engineers, anybody involved in the construction industry. These changes are looked at nationally in open meetings. It goes to various committees. Those committees will vote on it, and then it goes to the entire council to be voted on. And once those are done, it goes into effect, and then local jurisdictions can adopt it and make amendments as necessary. We're proposing just a few amendments. More or less, we adopt the code as is and limit amendments as much as possible so it's easier for the design community.
So some of the examples of the international fire code amendments, we use Denver amendments as a reference for a framework. Englewood's approach this year was to streamline, reduce the volume of amendments rather than detailed design level code language. Clarity. This provides clarity and alignment with city operations. Supporting all the amendments that we did support that Denver Fire adopted was anything that had to do with strategy and tactics, fire operations, anything that would look, that way we're keeping it similar to what Denver Fire responds to in the city and county of Denver. We stuck closer to the base IFC and then didn't adopt Denver's administrative policies specific to Denver only. We also adopted Appendix P. That's for shop drawing, system graphic requirements for permit applications. This is last year was Appendix O, or last code cycle was Appendix O. I also sent this to our Denver Fire Chief, and they support our amendments.
As far as the other building codes, the other 9 that fall to the building department, as I said, we kept that pretty much as is. Most of the amendments are just amending code section numbers and updating those. We did amend the definition of dwelling unit, habitable space, and sleeping room for clarification purposes, mostly to do with the changes with ADUs. It becomes confusing to some people, so this was just to clarify some of those. We've maintained previous amendments, such as deleting the fire sprinkler system requirements in 1 and 2 family homes, as well as maintaining the amendment for the emergency weather sheltering in places of worship, and also the previous amendments to the international code as far as solar ready and electric vehicle charging systems. part of which was required by the state. The building division staff and the fire marshal staff, we've been taking classes on the changes, and we work together to review the codes, and we recommend bringing or adopting the 2024 International Code Cycle.
Questions?
Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Montanez and Mr. Smith. City Council, we have any questions? Member Russell.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So we used to have a few changes that were different because of specifics in Englewood. Has that changed very much over the years since we first went with Denver Fire?
No, because we look at the base code, and that's what Denver Fire does as well. A lot of their code amendments have to do with their policies or airports or certain things that we do not have in our city. So we don't adopt their policies, but we do adopt anything that has to do with fire response, safety of the building, stuff like that. So that has not changed. I think that was your question.
Yes. Yes, I appreciate that. And does the fire code establish response times?
It does not.
Okay. Do we have response times in our contract with Denver?
We do.
Okay. All right.
It's 90. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure as long as we're meeting the 95% or less under 9 minutes, we are within our IGA, which we do.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Member Prang.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. Can you tell us why there are so few other jurisdictions that have adopted this? Is that the norm when it's updated and it just takes time for cities to come on board?
It truly depends, but a lot of times cities will miss a code cycle. So almost every city adopted the 2018 code cycle. So you'll see a lot of cities adopting the 2027. They're kind of waiting for a lot of changes, but the bigger jurisdictions usually adopt almost every code cycle.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. And then also when codes are updated like this and then we adopt it, if a site becomes out of compliance with a new code, are they grandfathered in? Like if there are changes, or do we require updates or?
So I guess the best way to put it, if a project's under construction now or has permits per the current adopted cycle, they stay on that cycle. And then we usually give a grace period. So any new projects during that grace period, they can go either the old code or the new code. But then we have a cutoff date where any submittals after that cutoff date, they have to go off the new code.
Okay, helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of questions. Regarding the dwelling, the language that you clarified on the dwelling units, can you speak to more specifics on that?
Yes. I actually have the definitions for you.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So dwelling unit, we added in, it's a single unit having its own address and entrance that provides complete independent living facilities. Then habitable space is a space in a building that meets the minimum area requirements of the building code and used for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, hobbies, or home office use. And then a sleeping room is any habitable space that meets the minimum area requirements of the building code and contains a closet or an area that is readily convertible to a closet.
Okay. Does the habitable, is there requirements in the code for minimum habitable space or room sizes and those kind of things? And
Yeah, it has room sizes, and then when you create habitable space, you have to meet, all the other requirements of a habitable space, which would include the energy code.
okay. Now, is this along the lines of Member Prang's question? Is if there's a house out there that doesn't meet the minimum requirements for habitable space, is that not relevant, or is it if you have more people sleeping per room than are allowed?
So let's take a house built in 1935. The rooms were typically smaller. Most of them don't have what we would consider egress windows. Those were built to that code at that time, so
Okay.
they stay as is. But if a new a home is built or an addition, or you're wanting to convert a room that wasn't previously habitable space, say um, a patio, an enclosed patio, then that would have to meet the current requirements.
And has anything changed in the code on the required, space per person in sleeping room? Is
No,
all
that has not
remaining the
changed
same?
as long as I've been doing it. I don't think it's
Okay.
changed. So
Very good. The second question I had was, I know Denver adopted single stair amendment to their fire code, maybe building code too. I don't know if it affected both. I imagine it would. Is that something that happened after? That's not in these amendments. That's something that happened after after this change. And is that something that we would have the option or the requirement of following on and adopting from Denver Fire?
So they did adopt, it was part of the whole package, but it was a little later in the adoption process.
Okay.
They're kind of doing the same method we are. We're trying to adopt the international codes. So that House bill is not part of the international codes, but that was something that was addressed later with Denver Fire. And then it became an addendum to the amendments.
Okay. Got it. So that's not a part of this
It is
this
not.
package as well. Okay. Very good. Any other questions? Well, seeing none, thank you for the presentation, and we'll look forward to the amendments coming forward.
thank you.
Thank you.
And I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but member Bethel is online, and I don't see him on the screen. I hope he didn't have any questions. Is somebody keeping an eye on that? Okay. And also the mayor is not here right now, but will be here, I believe, about 8:30, and he'll take over leading the regular meeting at that point. Our second item on the study session agenda is item 1B. We are going to be discussing the current ADU language in Title 16 for information and direction. We have with us Planning Manager Bryan Isham. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Bryan Isham, Community Development Planning Manager. Tonight we're here to discuss the interpretation that staff has been using for ADU heights when an ADU is above an operable garage. The concern has been that that may be negatively impacting construction of new ADUs within the community. So the staff interpretation is based on two sections of Title 16. The first is in our table of residential accessory structures and how we determine height for a secondary building. And it's this phrase highlighted 25 feet if an ADU is placed above an operable garage, but no higher than the principal structure. The second portion of our code that we use is the defined term for height. So buildings or structure height is the vertical distance of a building or structure as measured from the average elevation of the finished grade at the corners of the building or structure base. So in short terms, when planning staff looks at the construction of an ADU or proposed ADU, we first look at the height of the existing home. Say, for this example, we say 20 feet. The ADU would also be able to build up to 20 feet tall. We don't take into account the slope of the property because, as you'll see in this next example, it can do some different things for you. So a second way to look at this interpretation that we did discuss as staff was to take the existing height of the primary structure typically from a reference point, which is typically mean sea level, so how many feet above sea level. So in this example, we use the pitch of the roof, or the peak of the roof at 5,410 feet. And if we create a vertical plane that goes across that lot, while lots that slope down towards the alley get an extra boost in height, if you have a lot that slopes up towards the alley, you can end up with this point of conflict, which would actually reduce the allowable height for ADUs. In looking at the cases that we've had come before us prior to Code Next and since, what we're really finding out is, one, we have some shorter primary structures that are under 20 feet. Two, people want to build ADUs taller than 20 feet. We have had a couple, I think we've had 3 that have come through at under 20 feet, the shortest one being 19. We've had others that are closer to 20. I think one was over 26 foot or 25 foot in height prior to Code Next. That one actually had like 12-foot vaulted ceilings in the ADU above the garage. So a little bit of history of how we got here. So ADUs were approved in 2019. At that time, you could build an ADU above a garage at 26 feet. Code next amended a few things, lowered it to 25 feet to be consistent with the bulk plane. We also had some bigger discussions at our Planning and Zoning Commission and our UDC Steering Committee focused around lowering the height of the buildings to allow more solar access to people's rear yards. That's where the bulk of this came from. So when we look back at how we're interpreting it, how we could interpret it, and other sections of our code, what we find is that the staff interpretation, as we do it now, is complicated, but we feel like it's a very equal application. The alternative interpretation could provide some benefit for some, but not for everyone across the board on an equal playing field. If someone were to attach an ADU to a house, they could actually build it up to the height of the principal structure allows, which is 30 feet in the front 60% and 25 feet in the rear 40%. And they're also regulated under the same bulk plane requirements as the principal structure. So what we would propose are a series of amendments that would allow ADUs to get up to that 25-foot height by removing phrases such as "but no higher than residential principal structure" from that table, removing compatibility language from both EMC 1644B and 16553B accessory buildings. This language is pretty typical language used across planning departments across the nation, and it really is geared towards trying to ensure that the primary structure or the ADU looks like the house, acts like the house, does similar things to the house. But as you'll see, the Department of Local Affairs and the state government has said that we really can't do things like that anymore. So that's another proposed change. And then to update the maximum allowed height for detached ADUs to 25 feet. This would allow for some of the smaller lots that actually have the ability to create ADUs could build 2-story ADUs that would save some area on their lot coverage. So along with those amendments, we would propose another series of amendments that reflect the changes related to those state laws that we've been discussing since, I think, December of 2024. So there are a couple items in here that staff, you'll see after each item, we kind of denote where the impetus for that is coming from. There are some interpretive issues about how many lots or how many square feet that you need per lot area for ADUs in your MUR districts. That's the district that can allow up to 3 ADUs on the property. So we have an amendment included that would update that. Restructure our regulations for size, height, setbacks, and parking for ADUs into a table format. That way we don't have some in Title or Chapter 5 and some in Title 4. We can put it all in one place. Be very easily discerned for anybody reading it. Remove the phrase "but no higher than the principal structure," which is the discussion we're having tonight. Provide additional notes that ADUs can be combined with other accessory structures and that each portion is given its own square footage. That's currently a staff interpretation. So if you read the portion about secondary buildings, it tells you can have up to 1,000 square feet for a garage. Well, we've interpreted that you can have the garage and the ADU. It's not a one or the other. You can have both. So this would clarify that. Renumbering the existing Table 4-4 to Table 4-5. Removing primary design compatibility language. That actually comes from the Department of Local Affairs recommendations to meet state requirements. Including language regarding ADU allowances in existing and future plan unit developments. So that also comes from the Department of Local Affairs. So any future PUDs cannot treat ADUs more restrictively than what's allowed under our code. And existing PUDs may be superseded by adoption of these amendments. We only have 2 single-family PUDs, and I think one of them already allows for ADUs, the other one doesn't. And the one that doesn't is only about, I want to say it's less than 10 homes. Include language regarding housing that is prohibited to be used as an ADU. So what we've proposed in ours would be motorhomes, multi-purpose trailers, recreational vehicles, and mobile homes would not be allowed to be used as ADUs. Clarify interpretive issues regarding allowed quantities of minor accessory structures. This is something that while we were in the table, we've had some interpretive discussions about this. Since we're revising that section or proposing to revise that section, we would adjust this during that time frame. And then in Table 5.3, essentially we would just add a row that says all the ADU standards are now in Chapter 4. Again, remove the phrase "but no higher than the principal structure," and provide additional notes that ADUs can be combined with other accessory structures such as garages. Then in remaining 16.5.3, remove additional clearly incidental and subordinate language. Again, this is that language that if somebody was using a very subjective approach, say my team all left and new planners came in, we revised this whole section but left that language in, someone could use that from a planning side to interpret to say, well, no, your building really does have to be shorter than the primary house. So we would recommend removing that language so that we don't have some issues down the road. And then remove any building or structure over 12 feet high and over 200 square feet shall be compatible with the principal building language. Again, that's coming from DOLA to remove any compatibility language out of our code. And then also to remove ADUs from the prohibited use list in the neighborhood preservation overlay. We have had this come up in discussion. Currently, in the draft that we've provided to you all tonight, this is not included. I know it's come up at a public comment before, was to add the ability for front corner lots, rear corner lots, and courtyard lots to be able to have ADUs. Currently, that's prohibited, so that is a question that we have for you all tonight. And then the last thing we would propose to add regarding ADUs is a new definition in Chapter 13 that really talks about very similar things to what Karen was talking about dwelling units. Providing complete independent living facilities for one or more individuals located on the same lot as a proposed existing primary resident, and includes facilities for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. If you'd like, I can continue. We also have proposed amendments that, from a timing standpoint, when we amend Title 16, we really look at it as a 4-month process from the time that we have to notify to the time that it goes through like the appeal process, the 1-month appeal process. That really gives us about 3.5 to 4 months. So anytime we update Title 16, we want to try to make sure that we don't have other things in the wings, which right now we do know we have. We have non-conforming uses. We have ongoing discussions about conservation overlay districts. So our stance is to try to amend as much as we can at once. We had 2 other items that are related to state land use laws. One regarding landscape provisions related to non-functional turf grass and invasive species. The other one is the definition of household. Have a note down here, parking regulations, transit-oriented communities, and residential turf grass requirements. We would have separate discussions later this year. Those are much bigger topics. So the items that we would propose to revise at this time in Chapter 8, our landscape provisions are to prohibit the installation of non-functional turf, non-functional artificial turf, invasive plant species in new and redeveloped public and institutional, commercial and manufacturing and industrial uses, common interest property, so homeowners association property, new apartments and mixed-use developments, and street rights-of-way, parking lot medians, and transportation corridors. This is all consistent with state laws that were approved beginning in 2024, then again in 2025. And then we would also propose to renumber sections just to make room for this new section. In Chapter 13, which is our definitions, we propose to revise the definition of household to remove any references to marital status or any kind of relationship status to individuals, which would then require occupancy to be regulated by the Property Maintenance Code, which we presented to you all, I believe it was last year. And then add definitions for invasive plant species, turf artificial, functional turf, functional artificial turf, non-functional turf, and non-functional artificial turf, all as included in the new state laws that were approved in 2020. And that is it for my presentation. I have 2 additional slides that talk about, we have our proposed adoption schedule. To meet the schedule, we would provide our notice tomorrow. So this is the schedule, the soonest that we could go. If you'd like, we can slow it down if we need to, but this would be the fastest adoption schedule considering we have other Title 16 amendments that are kind of in the wings. And then if you'd like, I can present kind of the ADU process and how many above garage ADUs we've worked on in the last few years. Otherwise, free for questions.
I think we may maybe go ahead and go to questions now, seeing we have limited time left, but I would like to know how many ADUs we've worked on. That's a quick number. Okay, great. 13 permits. And new construction. Great. All right, questions, City Council? Member Russell?
Have you presented any of this information to the Planning and Zoning Commission yet?
We have.
And did they have responses to this?
No, on this one, they were generally okay moving forward. There was some discussion on including ADUs with front and rear corner lots and courtyard pattern lots, which is not shown in this one.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Member Prang?
Thank you. I just right now have one question around the neighborhood preservation overlay district. I understand your logic of wanting to get rid of the exclusion there, but I also am thinking in terms of like, how does this process occur to set up a preservation overlay district? Is it kind of like the recent discussions that we've had about the conservation overlay?
That's a great question, and that's one that we're looking into after having that discussion about conservation overlays. How did that process occur? And it's one of the reasons why at conservation overlays, we want to ensure that we create a process in Title 16 so that we have something that we as staff follow every time someone sends that. I do know that they had a number of neighborhood meetings. At the time of Title 16 or Code Next, ADUs were not prohibited within that district or within that overlay, but it had been an ongoing discussion, and our consultants included it anyway. So that one, the reason we're proposing to remove it is we actually have to be compliant with that state law. The state law does not allow us to have any prohibitions against ADUs anywhere where a single family.
That is
dwelling
if
unit is
our
allowed.
city chooses to fully comply
Yes.
with that.
Yes.
Okay. I most of what you've presented makes a heck of a lot of sense to me. I'm just thinking that if this neighborhood preservation overlay district follows a similar path and you have a neighborhood who's doing the work and coming forward and asking for the overlay, et cetera, then to have something in code that prohibits them from really truly having a full say in what they're asking for in their neighborhood, I struggle with that a little bit. I'm not a fan of that particular piece of the presentation. The height stuff, all of that makes a lot of sense to me, but I'm struggling with that piece a little bit. We can, I guess, have further conversation, revisit that when we look at it next, but for me right now, that's a question mark. Thank you.
Member Ward?
Yeah, I'd like to provide some commentary as well. Generally speaking, I'm not in favor of doing anything because the state mandates it. So I would take those state mandates out. If they're to the extent that they're good public policy that this body wants to adopt, I'm fine with it. But I don't feel like kowtowing, and I'm willing to suffer the consequences of not doing that until Cherry Hills Village prevails against the state of Colorado and in the state Supreme Court. The next thing is the question of multiple ADUs. I'm not sure that I have the same view on accessory structures that staff has, and I want to unpack that a little bit to understand. When we passed the ADU code, the vision in my head personally was one house, one ADU. And the proposal here would allow multiple ADUs, which again is not really what I think the residents of District 4 wanted, and not really what I think the residents in R1 neighborhoods in general want. I don't have a problem if somebody wants a house and a garage and a shed. They're not occupying the garage or the shed, or they're not renting the garage or the shed. But having a house and then 2 or 3 rentable structures also on the lot is no longer, in my opinion, single-family residential. So that is of concern to me. And the height limitations, I don't have a problem changing those, although I do wonder if there's some unintended consequences, and we maybe need to talk about the shade matter a little bit more as far as setbacks or bulk plane issues are concerned. making sure that we're not robbing neighbors of sunshine is somewhat important to me. So I think those are my immediate comments and my immediate feedback. I'm not sure if the rest of the body agrees, but if to the extent that this comes forward as a planned law for adoption, that's what you can expect to hear me trying to change.
Member Russell?
Thank you. And I would agree with the comments that Member Prang and Member Ward shared. Now, when you said 3 ADUs, that wasn't single-family neighborhoods, correct?
Correct, ma'am. That would not be the R1A districts, R1B, or R1C. It's only in districts that allow for up to basically 4 units per acre. So in the MUR districts, and I think, don't quote me, I believe R2B, but MUR.
So
A, B, and C.
multi-use residential.
Yes.
So, okay. I'm not necessarily for, building a lot of ADUs there either, but since it's that, I mean, there might be justification for it, but I think we should take a look at that. But I agree, I'm not in favor of giving away our home rule authority, and so I appreciate your presentation.
Just to provide some clarification, in those districts that we're talking about, the multiple ADUs, it's already allowed in our code. What we're clarifying is how you determine how many they can have. And the reason that's included in there was when our consultants came in and analyzed our code. So on those lots, you could build up to a 4-unit quadplex. So 4 units on one lot. The reason we had the discussion about up to 3 ADUs was to try to preserve some of that naturally occurring affordable housing, those existing homes, by allowing them to build multiple ADUs so they could still get to the 4 units on that one lot without scraping the entire lot and building a whole new project. So that's the reason why it's there. We actually haven't had anyone propose more than 1 ADU in the few years that we've been doing this. So the option is there. Having anybody go through with it.
Can you clarify, are you talking about the R1 district or the MU district?
It's in the MU districts, no R1 districts. R1s only allow up to 1 ADU.
Okay, and that was my primary concern. I'm not nearly as concerned about the MU districts.
My apologies.
So it sounds like what we need to decide as a council, the direction you need as a council is how much of this do we want to send back to P&Z, and I'm hearing pretty broad support for the height portion of it, maybe not for the preservation overlay portion of it at this point. I think all of the other pieces, I agree with Member Ward that we shouldn't just give away our home rule authority. But I think all of the other pieces that are coming from the state, I would want to do even if the state wasn't. So I'm supportive of them kind of universally across the board. And I would also want to add the ADUs on the corner, the corner lots and the courtyard pattern lots as well. I don't know if we'll get council support for that, but that's something I would like to see included since you mentioned that. I know we've had developers that have been interested in that, and it kind of makes the numbers crunch. What I've heard is that when you're trying to build on these courtyard lots, you can break it into 2 units and put up $2 million units. But if you want to make affordable units, you need smaller units and more of them, and adding those ADUs makes it pencil for the affordable housing, and that's what I've heard from developers. So I would really like to include that just so they could make that pencil. But I'll ask, put it back to council and see. I did talk to the mayor this afternoon, and he was generally supportive of these ADU amendments. But I wanted to see how far are we willing to go as a council. Member Prang.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm happy to, with the exception of the preservation overlays, have P&Z have the discussion about all of these pieces.
Okay.
If I might provide one additional comment, what I will say is I can understand the desire to not do something because the state tells us to do so. The other half of this is if we don't do certain things, we may face consequences. The
Right.
other side is our citizens will not have access to grant funding for ADUs.
Mm,
So even just the removal of that one piece of the MPO may make them not be able to access that funding, which we have had a few people write in and ask us, when will this occur? So
Gotcha.
I just want to make that very clear, and be very transparent that we have had people asking for that, and we do have to turn them down because we are not.
Does that change
Compliant.
anything for you, Member Bryan?
So, what you're suggesting is that we have to comply in its entirety for any individual within Englewood to apply for a grant to help build an ADU.
Correct. We have to have all of our code language in compliance and become an ADU supportive jurisdiction, which we already do because we have regulations for short-term rentals and ADUs.
Mhm.
So that makes us a supportive jurisdiction, but our code has to meet their requirements. Without those two things functioning together, somebody could apply, I assume, but they won't be granted funding.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm not sure if I can shift on that. I hear what you're saying, but I'm not. I'm trying to, because part of my, I guess, objection to that piece is to honor the wants and needs of our residents, and so I'm trying to weigh, an individual resident or a few residents applying for a grant with what I think is like the broader rights. If you had a whole neighborhood that was looking for an overlay, I don't even know how to
And
respond
if
to
it
that.
helps any, when that neighborhood preservation overlay was first adopted, ADUs were not prohibited.
I,
That
I,
only
I
came out of the
also,
recent.
I kind of also am sitting with the, like, I would like to see the result of how all of this plays out, because I'm not convinced that I agree with the interpretation of the level of risk that exists. And yeah, I guess I'm not willing to shift on that piece.
Very good. Member Ward?
I was just gonna say, I think you captured it best when you said not wanting to do it because the state mandates it. That is exactly my justification for not wanting to do it. Like, I feel like the state is bullying around municipalities. I feel like the state is abusing its power, and to the extent that we respond to that by accepting it, or by kowtowing it, or by going out of our way to change policy so that we can grab money here or there from the state, I'm not particularly interested in doing that. As long as we are able to effectively manage the city on our own, and preserve our home rule, I don't want to indulge the power grab that is occurring at the state house right now. So that's all.
So, Member Ward, I guess the question is that, I mean, we have citizens I know in the room who want to see these things go through because they want to build ADUs. Are you willing to send it back to P&Z and see, and then vote on it when it comes back again, or are there portions of it you're for, or what are the bound? We have a 6-person council. We got to get 4 people supportive of some portion of this.
Yeah, I think I already spoke to that. I don't have any problem sending it back to PUZ,
Gotcha.
and I wouldn't pull anything at this time, but I do want staff to be advised that when it does come back in its final iteration and in preparation for council approval, there will be some pushback from me on the state mandated policies.
Very good. And Member Bethel, do you have any? Would you like to weigh in on this? I don't.
Yeah, I'm happy to weigh in. How's the volume level?
Sounds great.
Sorry, working through a head cold today. I am in support of the ADUs and in the presentation that has come before us tonight. I think that it's important for us to clarify what we can and can't build as far as the ADUs are concerned, and I support giving our homeowners more options on how they add ADUs to their properties. That's the gist of it. When it comes to the preservation overlays and those overlay communities, I'm with Member Praying that it seems to defeat some of the purpose of having that overlay. However, I think that I can be convinced that if an ADU could be built and still be in compliance with the overlay, I'm not really sure how that would work. I need to do some more research, I guess, or some more learning on the topic.
Very good. Okay, so um, based on what I'm hearing tonight, we would like to move all of this forward except for the neighborhood preservation overlay. Is that accurate, council? Okay, very good. I believe that oh, I did want to add one other question before we close the discussion. That I had another constituent call and say that he wanted to build an ADU, but the configuration of his lot, and I think perhaps this is just me trying to understand the staff interpretation of code. Perhaps it's because his house faced the long side of the lot. It was a corner lot, made it difficult to build an ADU. Is there anything we need to change to make sure alternative configurations of lots?
I don't know right off the top of my head because I'm not sure what the issue was.
Okay.
If you know that individual, they can reach out to us.
Okay. I see him here in the audience. I think he's going to speak in public comment too, perhaps. But Mr. Borkart is here, and
okay.
And whatever, if there's something something that's prohibiting it just because the house is facing the long side of the lot on a corner lot, I would like to see that
Okay.
Considered as well. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Isham. And that concludes our study session topics. And I was confused earlier on how much time we had left because of that that clock. So we still have 15 minutes or about 15 minutes until the regular meetings. We will break until then. Thank you.
Test, test.
Good evening. Welcome to tonight's regular city council meeting. If you are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and I'll just make a note here at the beginning that member Bethel is online, and the mayor will be joining us in a little while. And moving on to the agenda, we have roll call.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Present.
Member Bethel,
Present.
Member Prang,
Present?
Member Russell,
Present.
Member Ward,
Present.
Mayor Sierra. Let the record show 5 present.
All right, moving on to agenda item 5A, minutes of the regular city council meeting from January 20, 2026. Do we have any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve the minutes of January 20th, 2026 meeting?
Thank you, Member Prang.
Second.
Thank you, Member Russell. All right, please vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Bethel,
Aye.
Member Prang,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes.
All right, our next item, item 6, is a recognition of the City of Englewood traffic team. We're going to recognize the traffic team for continued implementation of traffic-related safety measures within the community. The Public Works, Traffic Engineering, and Operations team are here in attendance. As the city, I'll just read through the talking points here. As the City of Englewood works to make continued progress in improving pedestrian safety throughout the community by taking proactive steps and addressing existing challenges, we'd like to take a moment to recognize the City of Englewood Traffic Engineering and Operations team. The traffic team recently addressed concerns at the intersection of Clarkson and Girard, first by installing hardware that improved ADA access to pedestrian push buttons, and second by modifying the programming of the traffic signals by adding a leading pedestrian interval. This provides pedestrians with a head start to enter the crosswalk several seconds before vehicles get a green light, making the crossing noticeably safer and more comfortable for pedestrians. The team will continue to look for opportunities to introduce LPIs at other signalized intersections throughout the city. These improvements are just 2 examples of the excellent work this team does to provide greater access and mobility for the Englewood community. Please join me in thanking the City of Englewood Traffic Engineering and Operations teams for their many contributions to the City of Englewood and our entire community. And we do have certificates. I'll have the clerk call your names, and I'll have you come up and hand those. Or do we have any comments from our traffic team before? Yeah, come on up. Oh, push the, there's a button on there. You got to light it up green. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, thank you for the recognition and the acknowledgement. We had originally heard about the concern and the request in collaboration with the hospital. And as you said, whether it's new signal builds, modifications, or other projects going on throughout the city, we hope to be able to find similar opportunities to introduce this type of safety benefit wherever possible.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, there's a huge priority for council to increase pedestrian safety, and we appreciate all the work you're doing towards it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, we'll hand out the certificates, and then we'll have council come forward for a picture.
All right, so the individuals being recognized are Thomas Shaw, Traffic Engineering Manager. Sean Del Margo, Traffic Operations Supervisor. And then we have Fafs Ritter, Engineer 2. Chris Rowe, Traffic Technician. and Stefan Schwalbach, traffic technician.
All right, on to item 8, recognition of public comment. There's an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue. Please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. And we do ask that beforehand, Englewood residents provide their address or cross streets on the sign-in sheet, and non-Englewood residents provide the name of their city. If you have addressed council in the last 90 days, you'll be moved to the bottom of the list. Written materials may be submitted to the city clerk in advance or at the meeting. Audio-visual materials must be submitted to the city clerk by 5 p.m. on Thursday prior to the meeting, and public comment will be limited to 90 minutes total. All right, and we have 5 speakers up tonight, and we'll let there are 3 who have spoken in the last 90 days, so we'll let our new speakers go first. Our first speaker is Johnny Borkart, who lives in District 3. Mr. Borkart, please come forward. And you'll push the button to light up the microphone, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Yep.
All right. Thank you for letting me come speak here. My name is Johnny Borkart. My family and I have been in Englewood for over 12 years now and lived in our current home for over 10 years. The city isn't just where we live. Having grown up in the Midwest, small town is where we feel at home. And when we moved to Denver, there wasn't a whole lot of that around. So when we had the fortunate luck to move to Englewood, we found a place that just aligned with that community atmosphere that we loved in the Midwest, where you'd sit out front in the rocking chairs and the neighbors would come across the street. It's something that we just absolutely love about Englewood. Our kids have all gone to Englewood schools, from walking my daughter to kindergarten at Bishop to riding bikes with my boys to Clayton, all the way through, and now running over to Englewood High School. I'm here tonight actually to ask your urgent attention on the ADU that was presented tonight, specifically regarding corner lots. As you can see, this is a picture of my home. We are on a very unusual lot where our house runs really wide along Fox Street and really narrow in the back. There's only about 16 feet between my house and the property line, so there's not a whole lot of room. And the reason that I'm asking for that actually is to support my wife's folks. My wife's her father recently lost his job. They own a home in Littleton, but losing that income has made it really, really tough for them, and they've had to expedite their plans to sell that home just to provide. And so what we're looking to do is to help provide for them a safe place, but also not only that, her mom has had some health and mobility issues. She's been to Swedish a few times over the last few months for a heart condition. And so they've spent, she actually was Flight for Life there just a little while ago. So what we're looking to do is build an ADU on our property. There's not a whole lot in the neighborhood. There's not a whole lot in Denver in general, but definitely not very many that have accessibility and location near Swedish. And so your attention to this matter and to these specific ADU updates would be extremely helpful as we look to take care of them, both in the short term, but also in the long term. We're not looking to rent this out. We're looking to get them close to my kids, but also close, so they're financially taken care of and health-wise taken care of as well. So I appreciate your attention to those ADU adjustments that Bryan submitted, and I did talk to him, so he said it would be addressed in those. Yeah, so any speed that you can give to that would be helpful. They're going to be selling their house here in the next few months, and yeah, any help you guys can give would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borcott. If you'll hang out for a second, I want to see if we have any questions for you. Any questions from council? Seeing none, thank you for your time tonight. Our next speaker is Rose Slocum. Hopefully I pronounced that right. All right. Rose Slocum, looks like you live in District 1. All right, very good. Thank you. Push the button and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
All right, I am wildly nervous, so here we go. All right, members of City Council, Pro Tem Mayor, neighbors. My name is Rose, and I'm here tonight as a mother and a member of this community who deeply loves my neighbors. I chose to raise my family here after being raised here as well, because this city values and cares for safety and dignity. Our children's schools, our parks, our neighborhoods are built on trust, on the idea that people around us will look out for one another. That trust is damaged when federal immigration enforcement operates in the ways that it currently is, and that spreads fear, separates families, and targets people who are simply trying to live, work, and raise children in peace. I'm asking the City of Englewood to make an official public statement rebuking ICE's harmful practices and clearly stating that ICE is not welcome operating within Englewood city limits the way they are now. This is not about partisan politics. It's about values. When parents are afraid to take their kids to school, to report crimes, or to seek medical care because of ICE activity, public safety suffers for everyone. Fear does not make a community safer, compassion does. As a mother, I cannot accept policies that normalize children watching their parents being taken away or neighbors disappearing overnight. I love my neighbor, not just the neighbor who looks like me, worships like me, or has the same paperwork, but every neighbor that has the ability to call Englewood home. In New Testament, Mark 12:31 teaches us, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." That command does not come with conditions. It does not ask about immigration status. It asks us to choose love, courage, and moral clarity. Englewood has an opportunity to lead with its values. A clear statement rejecting ICE's practices and presence would send a powerful message that this city stands for its families, for dignity, and for human decency. I urge you to be bold, to be compassionate, and to stand with your residents. Thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you, Ms. Slocum. Any questions from council? Seeing none, thank you for your time tonight. Our next speaker is Benjamin Ben David, a resident of District 1 as well. Good evening, Mr. Ben David.
Amherst and Broadway, good evening, City Council members. Just want to talk about a problem address that I've been addressing to the City Council now for about 8 years, since 2018. This is 2831 South Lincoln Street. We recently had the folks there came out and were repairing a car and playing really loud music, blasting through the neighborhood. I called EPD, they came out. They addressed them and talked to them. After they left, 10 minutes later, they turned the music back up again, even louder than before. Called EPD. They came back again, talked to them. After EPD left, 10 minutes later, they turned the music back up louder than before. I called EPD a third time, and they came back and turned it down again. At that time, the officers were like a little bit cross with them. The only problem is that they had addressed these people before, just a few months before. So that would make the fourth time that they had talked to them about that. This is a drug trap house. This is a place where people come and go 24 hours a day, mostly homeless people that we see going in and out of there. We see people coming there on mopeds, motorcycles, on foot from the alleyway and from the front. Cars will pull up with one person sitting in the car with the motor running, not even pulling over. One person will run into the house and run back out into the car. And most of the cars that come there have their license plates taken off, or the license plates are, they have tape or cardboard on the back, so they're not identified. The house was raided on 11/19/25 with EPD SWAT. A fugitive from justice was taken out of there. But that's not the first fugitive from justice that was taken out of that house. There's been at least 4 other people since 2018 that have been removed from that house that were fugitives from justice. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ben David. Any questions from City Council? Seeing none, we appreciate your continued attention to this issue. And before we go into the next speaker, I thought maybe I should backpedal a little bit and see who's supposed to be giving response to public comment tonight. Is it you, Member Ward? I think Member Russell did it last. So that goes to Member Ward. All right, sorry for the late notice. Our next speaker tonight is Rebecca Kramer, a resident of District 2. Good evening, Ms. Kramer.
Good evening, Council. I did provide one of the slides out of the slide deck for presentation later this evening on the 20-year financial planning model. Tonight's slide deck includes a total monthly single-family bill of $53.14 as the baseline for financial modeling. That figure is not just outdated, it's misleading. The current flat monthly charges on a water and sewer bill total $75.76. Add to that the conservative winter usage estimate of $20 for a 2-person household. The actual monthly bill is closer to $96.16. That's nearly double the figure used in the model. This discrepancy raises serious concerns. Has this number been adjusted to reflect the more than tenfold increase in fees since 2019? Who is responsible for providing and validating the data used in these models? Are all of the city's financial planning models built on similarly flawed assumptions? What would the projections look like if accurate billing data were used? As a taxpayer, I support the emergency $3 million interdepartmental transfer from the sewer fund to the storm drainage fund. It appears to be the only viable option to avoid defaulting on our debt obligations. But this situation is not acceptable as a long-term pattern. The fact that we've reached this point where emergency borrowing is required to stay solvent suggests deeper failures in budgeting, project oversight, and forecasting. If the models are wrong, the plans are wrong. If the plans are wrong, the public is being misled. I urge Council to direct staff to immediately review and correct the inputs used in this model and to discuss whether similar errors exist in other enterprise fund projections. We need transparency, accountability, and a financial plan built on reality, not assumptions.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Any questions from City Council? Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thank
today. You. And our last speaker is...
We do have one additional, just
we have
so
one
you know.
additional. Okay.
PJ.
Our second to last speaker is Regan Benson from a city outside of Englewood. Good evening, Ms.
Good
Benson.
evening, Council. Yeah, that city outside of Englewood is utopia.
Are you recording, Ms. Benson?
Excuse me?
Are you recording?
The light is green. You're interrupting me. So I'm here tonight. Oh, the light's, now it's green again. I've been acknowledged to address council? Okay, that's good. Because I wouldn't want you to be participating in discriminatory behavior, Mr. Council President, of the evening where you allow some people to record and others to not. So thank you for keeping your mouth shut now. Much appreciated. So I am here tonight because Allied Security has a problem. And I know you got a bunch of newbies back here, but they're getting loud. Did you hear them? They're disgusted with my public comment, and they're interrupting the meeting. But that's okay, right? Of course it is. They just are so new, they don't know what the hell is going on in Englewood about how you target people and then get sued for it. Maybe they'll figure it out, how much it's going to cost them. Then they might feel a little bit different, right? So about that lawsuit, yeah, it's on hold because your attorneys are playing games and they filed a motion to stay discovery. So we'll be on a good hold for a long time. Well, you know, Tamara over there runs your city into the ground. So anyway, Allied Security keeps targeting the homeless. They just don't get it. And I don't understand why. And believe it or not, it's not the cops. It seems as though the cops understand their new role in not targeting the homeless for criminalization. So today, the supervisor, Joe, yeah, he's down in the library telling a homeless individual that he needs to leave because he's recording him. Well, are we really going to start this again? I certainly hope not, because Joe didn't heed his warning, and he thought he should escalate the situation. Sound familiar, Joe? Joe is also a gun carrier for Allied, someone you pay big bucks to keep us all safe in this godforsaken hellhole. Godforsaken. Not done, Joe. So Joe needs to be fired. And that's why I'm here tonight. But Sean, I wrote him a note today. He approached me professionally and wanted to problem solve this issue. So I was excited to hear that the Allied contract will be taken up with the police department. So that'll be wonderful to resurrect in 2026 with the Englewood Police Department.
Thank you for your time, Ms. Benson. Any questions from council? Seeing none, I do want to make a note for the record that Ms. Benson was recording by all appearances the meeting in violation of our rules. Just have that be in the record for enforcement references in the future. And we do have one final speaker. We have citizen PJ Kolnick is here from District 2 or 1? District 1. Did he provide his address and cross streets? Yes, he did. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, PJ Kolnick, Amherst, and yeah, I just want to say thank you for taking up the study session tonight. Very informative. Much in favor of the height limit adjustments and addressing those pieces. You know, there is one. It is an interesting challenge where the actual structures. One of the things that was being asked to remove was the exterior look of the ADUs, looking similar or you know, coordinating in nature to the principal structure. Even though the state law, if we are trying to correspond with that, maybe not saying it, but I do think that's probably an important thing to, if not require by code, to at least encourage by code. I think we would probably find ourselves hoping that structures on the same lot look somewhat coordinated. So if there's a way to encourage that, or to say to some extent, like by any means necessary, or to whatever extent possible, some language that is encouraging or maybe not requiring would be useful in that instance for external appearance. Other than that, I think I just wanted to say that I think it's worth having P&Z and staff maybe flesh out what the instances of corner lots and courtyard lot ADUs, what kind of code requirements could be put in for that, and allow that to be voted on and considered by council. I didn't hear that tonight as instructions to staff, and I think if you're looking to pass something for Title 16 in the next, you know, in one big block, it's worth at least considering that and seeing what staff would say about it. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kolnick. Any questions from City Council? Seeing none, we appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks, guys.
All right, and now we are moving on to council response to public comment. Member Ward, since I gave you such late notice, you're welcome to take another minute to prepare your thoughts if you'd like, but it looks like you're ready to go.
I will just go down the list one by one. Mr. Borkhardt, thank you for coming tonight. You've exposed some unique challenges regarding corner lots and oddly shaped lots. We have a number of them in Englewood, and we dealt with this problem when we talked about single hauler trash. Some homes have access to alleys, some homes don't. Some homes have a long walk to the front of the street and prefer alley service. One of the challenges we have with specifically to Title 16 is that Title 16 tends to have a one-size-fits-all approach. So we're making public policy that governs the entirety of the city where we have certain unique circumstances. So I think when we do have that ADU discussion, we can have a more robust discussion on what, if any, exceptions we want to make and what those should look like. We're also having a planning to have a discussion on non-conforming properties. Similarly, these things don't fit into the area that they're in right now under the current code, but they may need updates or may need to be rebuilt, and we don't have a provision for that right now. So I look forward to having a discussion on how we can alter our Title 16 code to benefit not only the rule, but also certain exceptions and make it easier for people to navigate that as they look to manage what happens on their own properties. Ms. Slocum, Member Prang and I have similar feelings about this ICE issue and specifically federal abuse of power that appears to be happening at the current time. I know that it's a polarizing political issue, but I have great respect for not just the spirit, but also the letter of the Constitution, and in particular, the Fourth Amendment. And so I am not particularly interested in continuing any relationship that we may have with the federal government right now, and I'm looking forward to discussing that with the body as a whole, because I have some concerns about activities that blatantly violate people's civil rights and things like cops in masks. Mr. Ben David, thanks for coming again and bringing this neighborhood house to our attention. I'm pretty sure the police department is aware of the situation. These things have a tendency to move slowly. They usually don't take 8 years, but the continued political pressure that you're putting on us, I think, will help move things along. And I hope to get that situation resolved for you in the near future. Regarding Ms. Kramer's comments about the projections of our utilities department and our SPR department, if you can give your questions to the clerk, I can enter those as a council request and get specific answers to how the financial model may or may not differ from what we're being told. Because I agree, if it is not accurate, that is very concerning. And then lastly, PJ Kolnick, thanks for coming and talking to us about ADUs. Always good to see you. And thanks for stopping by. That's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ward. Moving on to consent agenda items 9A, B, and C, and I believe we had one removed by Member Russell, 9A1. Were there any others? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve 9B, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 9C1?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Please vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Bethel.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes.
Thank you. Now the 9A1, we have an ordinance to approve memorandum of understanding between the City of Englewood and the University of Denver. Deputy City Manager Tim Dodd, are you speaking to answering the questions on this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor
Okay.
Pro Tem. So just so council is aware, this is a program that we're really interested in. It's a low-cost program for the city. It's an AmeriCorps program that's sponsored by the University of Denver, or DU. I want to thank a few city employees, Assistant City Attorney Jackson Higgins, Will Slate in our Community Development Department, Colton Zajkovic in the City Manager's Office, and Seth Brown, the City Manager's Office, for working on this. But essentially, it's an opportunity for the city to have 3 low-cost fellows. So essentially, the MOU basically shows that the city would be paying $1 per hour towards their work. So either 300 hours or 450 hours. We're proposing that there be 3 of them. And we may not find candidates for all 3, but the 3 that we're proposing are to work on food insecurity, economic development, and to assist Seth Brown with the implementation of our housing program. Again, it's a pretty exciting opportunity. I think the question that came up was around the fact that in the MOU, it specifically notes the Denver metro area. I had a chance to speak this afternoon with the staff members, including the assistant city attorney that worked on this, and found that this is something that they reviewed as part of the process of the developing the MOU. The phrasing came directly from the Corbell AmeriCorps program mission, which is still present on their website. In the city's discussions with DU, it was decided deliberately that sending students to serve the city of Englewood effectively serve the purpose of providing essential services in the Denver metro area. That's why the ordinance language does not use Denver or Denver County, and the terms of the MOU are drafted to consider service within the city of Englewood with its current capacity serving Englewood residents and those visiting the city. It does not include the requirement to provide any services outside our city lines. They also want to emphasize that discussions with DU regarding the services Englewood currently provides in the background of Corbell mission gives its affiliation with the University of Denver.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Dodd. Member Russell.
So I was asking about specific language in the very first page. It was, and I don't have that with me right now, but it says specifically in the project agreement that it is designed, their whole project is designed to benefit, not to provide a benefit to the city of Englewood, but rather to the city and county of Denver, according to the project description on page 1. So is that their project description or is that not?
Yes, thank you, Member Russell. So that does come from the University of Denver. Again, my understanding is that when the assistant city attorney and the members of our staff looked at it, they decided to keep that in because the mission of the program originally was specific to Denver, but they've expanded it to the area. And so we do believe that the terms of the agreement do specify Englewood in our region. But because that was how the program started, that's why it was deliberately kept in. There is no, we checked with Corbell this afternoon after we got your question. There is no implication whatsoever that fellows working for the city of Englewood will be doing any kind of work whatsoever on behalf of the city of Denver.
Okay, so it will benefit only the city of Englewood. Is that correct? Now, we pay a certain percentage of their room and board or something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a pretty low cost program on the city's end. So for example, there are 2 different programs. Fellows can either work for 300 hours or 450 hours. And essentially we pay $1 per hour. So if they're working 300 hours, the city pays $300 to the University of Denver. And then University of Denver and the program pays the remainder of the fellowship.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve 11A1?
Move to approve 9A1.
Or sorry, 9A1. Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any further comments? All right. Seeing none, let's vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Bethel.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes.
All right, we good to continue moving? Okay. We'll go on to 11A1, and staff has asked to table this because we do not have a representative from Arapahoe County present to speak to it. So if I could get a motion to table it to a date certain, I believe February 17th.
I move to table to February 17th.
Get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, please vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Bethel,
Aye.
Member Pring,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes.
All right, moving on to item CB9, 11A2, we have amendment to the municipal code regarding maximum penalties to align with state law. City Attorney Tamara Niles is here with us. Thank you, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Anderson. This is an item that you've seen before as City Council. We brought this proactively back in 2024, where we recommended a change to municipal code to ensure that penalties for offenses in municipal court would not exceed the penalties for the exact same offense if it was prosecuted in a district court. When there's cases of concurrent jurisdiction, police departments have the discretion to decide whether to file a criminal case in municipal or district. And so it was intended at that time that no matter what the police chose, that people would face the same penalties. When we first brought it in 2024, we received some concern from municipal court, and the City Council decided to table this matter until the Colorado Supreme Court ruled on it, because it was currently being challenged. The Colorado Supreme Court has now ruled and found that municipal courts cannot have penalties that exceed those for the same offense in district court. So we're bringing it back again. We've revised the language slightly to specifically mirror the language that the Supreme Court used in its opinion in this case, so that it would be a single addition to our municipal code that says misdemeanors and petty offenses cannot receive different penalties in municipal court versus district court. Instead, when municipal court has this offense, they will use the same maximum sentencing schedule that's used in district court. That's it. Short presentation on that. I did attach in the packet the entire court opinion on the matter as well.
Thank you, City Attorney Niles. Questions from City Council? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve CB9?
Move to approve CB9.
And can I get a second? I'll second it. Discussion. No discussion this time. All right, moving to a vote.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Bethel.
Aye.
Was that a nay?
Aye.
Oh, aye. Okay, perfect. Member Pring,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes.
All right, that was relatively painless. Moving on to CB10. Municipal Code Cleanup Project, Title II, Boards and Commissions. City Attorney Tamara Niles again.
Before I start the presentation on this item, first this was tabled in April and then revised, but Councilmember Russell and I had emailed earlier today that she perhaps may want to table this item until after the study session on the reorg of code enforcement to community development. This ordinance does incorporate a reference to the reorganization, and if Councilmember Russell would prefer to table this until after that study session, I certainly have no objection to that.
Member Russell, you want to speak to it?
We could do that, although we could amend it to remove the stuff that has the items that deal with that reorganization and then just save that to add later. I'm amenable to doing either.
Council, what you have a preference or want to just keep it the same and go forward with it, knowing that Member Russell's probably not supportive if it remains the same, or potentially propose that amendment when we get to discussion? Member Pring?
I would support either amending or postponing or tabling it. I appreciate all of the time and work that's gone into the cleanup that was asked for, and so I'm happy with all of that, but I do agree that council had discussed having a discussion on the name change specific to that one board, and So I do think that we need to have that discussion first before making name changes or agreeing to any potential shift in duties.
City Attorney Niles, if we did amend this, would we need to come back and have another amendment to this amendment to put that language back in?
We would. I think it would be a little bit cleaner if
We
we
just tabled
only did it, if we only amended the section regarding Code Enforcement Advisory Committee once.
Okay.
We can do it twice, but it would require just a bit more staff work and I think invite some potential error. So it may be easier just to wait and then, I mean, it's been tabled since April. I think we can wait another month.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and make a motion if you'd like, Member Russell.
Okay, and I appreciate this, City Attorney Niles. I would move to table this. Will we have the study session before the next council meeting?
Yes, that study session is scheduled for next week.
Okay.
So that presents another option of voting for it on first reading and then as is, and then if we come out of that discussion want to amend it, we could amend it on second reading, go back to first reading. I know we're not always a fan of going that route, but
I would prefer not to go that route, but because I would like in the study session to talk about what we would like to do and then have it in. So would it be easiest to schedule it for the 17th or the following council meeting after that?
Because the next meeting is on a Tuesday, that would only give us 2 days to finalize everything. So I think it'd probably be easier from our perspective if you tabled it to a date uncertain. That way, if we can get the changes, we can get it on the next meeting. But in case we can't get it done, we didn't violate your tabling.
All right,
motion.
I appreciate that. I move that we table agenda item 11A3 to a date uncertain.
Second.
all right, discussion. I'm hesitant to support this, just mostly because I know there's a portion in here allowing us to add more members to ETAC that I would like to see move forward pretty quickly, but that will still come forward in we can still get those members on, just be a few weeks later than initially planned. So I'll support it. Any other comments? Okay, City Clerk, we're ready for the vote.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Bethel.
Aye.
Member Pring.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes.
And that was an aye, correct, Member Bethel? Cut off.
Yeah, I apologize. My voice is pretty rough tonight.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Sorry about that you're sick. All right. Thank you, City Attorney Niles. We will. Oh, you're up. You're up again. All right, we're back for the CB12 City Manager Emergency Declaration Authority. City Attorney Hammer Niles.
Okay, we just had a study session on this. So this PowerPoint presentation is a bit abbreviated from the one that I just presented in the study session. This, of course, is a proposal to amend municipal code to give the city manager authority to award contracts and accept gifts in the case of a declared emergency if city council is unable to meet. And as we discussed in detail, what is a local disaster emergency? That's what the city manager is required to declare before this would go into effect. And then that describes all of the incidents that could apply, such as a natural disaster, hazardous substance spill, something like that. A local disaster emergency is a declaration for up to 7 days. And then any renewal would have to be at city council direction only. And here are the proposed municipal code changes, which we discussed. However, there is one change that we discussed at the study session that is added to the ordinance in front of you tonight, that it provides the chain of authority if the city manager is unable to act. So let's say there's a disaster to such an extent that 4 council members can't meet, and neither can the city manager. Then it specifically declares then that the Anyone that has been designated as acting city manager in the city manager's absence will have that authority. And then if none, then it will go deputy city. I put deputy CA in this PowerPoint, but it should be deputy CM, deputy city manager, police chief, finance director, public works director, or if none of the above, then any other city department director that is able to act in that capacity will then have the authority to make that disaster declaration. This is much shorter than I would normally present, but we just had the study session and of course spent some significant time discussing it. So I would welcome any questions.
All right, questions, City Council. Member Russell.
Thank you. One of my questions really is that it's a staff member rather than an elected official. Would it be possible to put the mayor in as one in the chain of command that could make the decision?
Well, under state law, it is the city manager or the principal executive officer that is the administrative employee that has the authority to make that disaster declaration. But we certainly could declare that the mayor has the authority to award contracts and accept gifts because we have drafted it in such a way that it's the city manager or city staff that can then award contracts and accept gifts if city council can't meet to award those things and accept gifts. But we could certainly change that to say it could be the mayor, or in the mayor's absence, the mayor pro tem, or then any council member.
So is it understood that when the city manager acts, he's acting at the direction of the mayor and the council generally? Or the part that gave me heartburn was the section that city council was taken out of our ordinance altogether.
This was designed to anticipate a circumstance and an emergency to such a degree that city council can't meet, because no one city council member has any more authority, has no authority to act on behalf of the city. Only 4 or more council members acting together have authority to act on behalf of the city. Employees, however, do have some authority to act on behalf of the city, but it's up to city council to designate what that authority is. And so that's why we wrote it this way. City council, for example, has already authorized the mayor to award contracts at $125,000 or less, or I believe now it's $250,000 or less if it's been budgeted. So this essentially changes those limits in case of an emergency. It expands that contracting authority that already exists for the city manager.
Okay.
And that's why we wrote it that way.
Okay, so let me ask one other question. So during COVID, there actually was an emergency. We called a meeting. There was not a quorum the first night. I think maybe the second night there was a quorum, but there was, I don't believe you were the city attorney at the time. Correct?
No, I was not.
And so the city attorney had drafted, and it probably was just a template that came out. I don't know where it came from, but because it was delayed by 24 hours, the public in that declared emergency gave the city manager the authority to confiscate private property. And when some of the public had an opportunity to read that, they were up in arms about that. So there was time for that to be changed because the emergency meeting didn't happen immediately. So I guess what I want to do is protect from something like that, that if the decision was taken out of the elected officials' hands, what can the elected officials do?
Well, I can certainly understand why that would concern our citizens. This doesn't grant that authority. I also think one thing we've done differently that we didn't do at the beginning of COVID, from my understanding, because I wasn't here, is that we now do have specific authority and procedures for calling an all electronic emergency meeting. So that, I mean, if you're available, you have Wi-Fi and you have a computer, the mayor can call an emergency meeting, and that would count for the quorum purposes, and it wouldn't, then that additional contracting authority wouldn't apply. So this doesn't give the city manager authority to take any private property or to do anything extraordinary other than to issue emergency contracts that only respond to the emergency. So let's say something terrible happened and we need private contractors to come in and turn off electricity and clear our streets, and it's too dangerous for our staff to do it, something like that. If it's under $125,000, the city manager can do it anyway. It doesn't need council's approval. But if it's over 125,000, but we can't get 5 council members to be able to meet electronically to say, yes, city manager, you can award this contract to the specialist to make sure our citizens are safe. That's when this would apply. And that would only last until city council can get a quorum. So once city council can meet, whether it be in person or all electronic, then this authority goes away. Then city council would need to go back to considering awarding contracts, accepting gifts of aid.
And then generally it's written to last for 7 days. Is that?
That's the emergency declaration under state law. It can
Okay.
last only up to 7 days.
Okay.
Any more than 7 days, city council would have to authorize that. And this doesn't change that at all.
Okay. I mean, and one hypothetical situation out there that has been talked about in the media is a cyber attack, which means if a cyber attack happened, probably there would not be access to internet and Zoom meeting. So I guess what I'm asking, are there emergency preparations that if something like that happened, is that something the county in their emergency preparedness talks about?
A cyber attack is not something that is anticipated under state law for the declaration of a local disaster emergency. It has to be life or property is in danger. I guess someone can argue it's property. But in that case, though, I would anticipate there would be staff knocking on your door, handing it. They would go back to old school. Here is your written notice of public meeting. It's at council chambers in 4 hours, and that's all in person, the way it used to be.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate those answers.
Other questions? All right. Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve CB 12?
I move to approve CB 12.
Thank you, Member Ward. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Pring. Discussion. Member Russell.
Thank you. Actually, I will support this because you have alleviated my fears. So thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Seeing no other comments from council, unless Member Bethel, I just want to always make sure you don't have to say anything to scratch your voice, but if you do, then we'll let you speak to an item anytime you want.
I appreciate you checking in on me. I am generally in favor of this measure. I think it's well crafted and very important.
All right. Thank you. With that, City Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Bethel.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes.
All right. Thank you. And I think you're still with us. CB 6, if we have any questions for second reading. This is amendment to municipal code to clarify grant agreement approval mechanisms. This is on second reading, so I don't know if you have anything to present or if we want to move straight to any final questions.
No, normally this would have, because it was approved on first reading, it would normally be on consent agenda, but it was not unanimously approved at
Okay.
first reading. So it's just back for second reading, and I would welcome any questions.
Any questions? Member Russell?
So this is
11B1.
11B1. Okay,
Yeah.
so I did have one question on this, and it the third whereas Englewood Charter 79 requires City Council ordinance authorization to enter into contracts with other. Actually, there's a duplicate with other there's two with other governmental bodies. So it's a typo in that third whereas. So my question there is duplicate wording. If this was already in effect when, would this have impacted the SIPA grant in how we?
So how it would have changed the SIPA grant is that city council would have been required to approve it by motion. So it would have just been a single, city council reviews it. In that case, city council had requested some grant language revision and tabled it, and that would have still been the process. Then we would have taken it back just like we did, gone back to SIPA, revised it, brought it back, and then it would have just been a single motion approval. Instead, we brought it as an ordinance approval, which followed that same original process. City council tabled it, we took it to SIPA, brought it back, and then city council had to approve it twice, on first reading and second reading. Then we have to publish it, and it doesn't become effective until 30 days after second publication, which means we can't sign the grant agreement and we can't receive the funds for 30 days after that. If it's a motion approval process, however, just to receive a gift that doesn't require any joint action, just to take their money. In that case, let's say it's approved by motion on a Monday night, Tuesday night, the mayor signs it, we could get the money as early as Wednesday.
So the SIPA grant wouldn't have been done under this way anyway, or it would have?
No, I anticipate it would have been a motion approval if this is approved, because then we would have treated it like an acceptance of a gift. Right now, we're reading the most conservative reading possible because we have one charter section that says city council just has to approve acceptance of gifts. And then we have another one that says, but if the city enters into a contract with any other public entity for the joint performance of any activity, it has to be by ordinance. So we are taking the most conservative reading to say, okay, if it's another government entity that wants to give us money and we're entering into a contract to do it, then we want it to be by ordinance approval. As that hasn't always been the interpretation. In fact, it's my understanding that sometimes city council didn't even approve the acceptance of grants before I started. We've uncovered some things. So we've changed that process. Then we went very formal, but it's made it a bit more difficult operationally. So we're asking city council to say, okay, we can meet in the middle. We still have to approve acceptance of every grant, but it can be by motion unless we have to do something in return. So we just had a question this week, for example, that or last week, if it is a grant, but we have to give matching funds. If we have to pony up $50,000, then my advice was, no, we want that by ordinance because we are doing something else and we're doing something with them and it's substantial. So that I would anticipate would still be ordinance approval. But if it's just they want to give us $100,000 to improve our website, then that would be by motion going forward if this is approved.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Other questions? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve CB6?
Move to approve CB6.
Thank you, Member Prang. Can I get a second? I'll second. Discussion on CB6. Member Ward.
I just wanted to point out that I voted no on this, which is why it wasn't on the consent agenda. I will be flipping that vote tonight to a yes. After some pondering of Councilman Anderson's rebuttal to my claims about the charter, I decided that the issue wasn't as stark as I had determined that night. So I'll be a yes vote on this tonight.
Well, I will not take your responding to my persuasion as a new habit, but I appreciate you hearing me out. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, let's vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Bethel.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes.
Okay, moving on to CB11. Request to transfer loans from Sewer Enterprise Fund to the Storm Drainage Fund. This is an emergency ordinance, but I believe it can pass by unanimous vote by quorum present. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, what?
The emergency ordinance we don't need all members of council, just a unanimous vote by members of quorum present.
Yes.
Okay.
So if we're required to have at least 5 members present, and no matter how many are present, it has to be unanimous.
Okay, very good. All right, we have our Director of Finance, Kevin Ingalls, Director of South Platte Renewing Utilities, Peter Van Rye is not here. We have Deputy Director of Business Solutions and Engineering, Sarah Stone, and I see we also have Public Works Director, Victor Rochelle. Deputy Director Stone.
Good evening, Council. We actually have Director Van Rye online.
Oh, great.
So I will
there he is.
advance. Yep, he's up there. So I will advance the slides for him, but he's going to kick off the presentation tonight.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for considering this item tonight. This is an item that we presented a couple weeks ago that is essentially a first step in stabilizing the enterprise fund for the stormwater enterprise, and it's a short-term interfund loan between the sewer fund and the storm drainage fund to bridge the gap until we have a long-term solution that we are actively pursuing that should fully stabilize the fund shortly. And so what we're going to do tonight is, since it's second reading, we were going to go through the presentation that we provided on first reading just more quickly than we did last time to review what we had talked about for the loan and why it's important. And then there were a number of questions that came out of the first reading discussion with council that we have a series of a half a dozen or more additional slides that will dive a little bit deeper into some of the questions that were raised during first reading. And then we will look to council for approval of the ordinance on an emergency basis to allow us to make this fund transfer and stabilize the storm drainage fund, thereby releasing some of the matching funds that we are anticipating for the fund. So what I'm going to do first is turn this over to Director Ingalls, who will run through a couple slides, and then we'll switch off until we get towards the end of this. So Director Ingalls.
Thank you, Director Van Rye. Kevin Ingalls, Director of Finance. This first slide here, we're going to talk about the capital and the funding timelines for the Stormwater Fund. 2018 is when the current discussions of capital improvement needs were started to be discussed. The fee quarterly at that time was $4.16 per quarter per household. That really did not allow any buildup of the funds in order to handle capital spending, and in very minimal maintenance was also only being done at that rate. So that kicked off a master plan in 2019. Also in 2019, council approved a $3 million loan similar to what we're requesting this evening. Ultimately, that loan was never used because the projects didn't ramp up until 2020 and 2021, which is when we started borrowing funds. I am going to turn it over to Public Works Director Rochelle. He's going to talk about some of the actual capital projects that happened.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Victor Rochelle, Director of Public Works. So touching on the stormwater capital projects and funding timelines, recapping from our last presentation, in 2022, we had a couple of projects going. We spent $2.5 million for new pipes, inlets, correcting some deficiencies. This was primarily in the Acoma area. That's upsizing pipes and adding new inlets in addition to larger inlets to address concerns in that stretch. We also had the Old Hamden Complete Streets project. The grant was accepted at that time, and as part of that project, we identified the need to complete stormwater improvements. So those are the subsurface improvements that are underneath the Complete Streets project. And then just as a reminder, only one intersection was included in the master plan in 2020 along Old Hampton. The broader scope of the Old Hampton utility and stormwater improvements were not included in that master plan and therefore not included in the rate study that was completed at that time. The total estimated cost of all the stormwater improvements as part of the Old Hampton Utilities and Stormwater Project, $5.2 million. And then in 2024, we broke ground on the South Englewood Flood Reduction Project. That project totaled $31.4 million. Of that, there was property acquisitions in the realm of $6.2 million and design cost of $1.3, with the remainder being construction of the two ponds, the tunneling from the pond to Rotolo Park, and then lining the Oxford pipe from the new pond all the way to the outfall at South Platte. Last on the screen, just a note that the Old Hampton stormwater change orders to date have totaled $175,000, which was in the realm of the contingency plan for the project. So as we do a deeper dive analysis on what went right and where we missed the mark, when we talk about what went right with stormwater, the projects and programs met resident and council expectations, with the rapid upgrade of the South Englewood Basin being the largest project undertaken. We completed most projects on time and within budget. We had a great interest rate on the $8 million stormwater bond. We also used the state revolving loan for low interest borrowing to complete some of those projects. Where we missed the mark, the stormwater division was created and expanded with one department and at a rapid acceleration with the largest recorded history without adequate staff increases to match and track. We also had substantial turnover in public works from 2018 to 2023 and a lack of business services being created and financial analysis as those capital budgets grew and we started tackling these projects. As Director Ingalls touched on, we also failed to draw down on an approved $3 million loan in 2019 from the general fund when the Old Hampton Complete Streets project was awarded. And then we had the Old Hampton project undertaken without that financial analysis and it not being part of the rate study at the time. I'll turn it back over to Deputy Director Stone.
So just to review the current capital obligations and outstanding obligations through the Stormwater Fund, back in early December, the fund balance for the Stormwater Fund was about $2.5 million. There were final invoices for the South Englewood Flood Reduction Project and retainage to be paid out of that fund balance. That was done in December 2025 and early January. And additionally, there was about $632,000 paid out to the contractor for the Old Hampton Utilities project. So at that time, that brought the fund balance down to around $300,000, which is about the minimum that's allowed with 3 months of operation expenses withheld for that fund. So that the second half of the slide here shows outstanding obligations through June 2026 and is how we got to the $3 million loan request. So we do have the invoices in hand from Mile High Flood District for the 2025 IGAs amounting to $775,000. We also have an outstanding invoice in hand from the Old Hampton's utility contractor for roughly $125,000 for the Stormwater Fund. And there is a total of $849,000 of that project to complete over the next couple months. And in May and June, there are obligations from a debt service perspective. So the funding mechanism that was used for the South Englewood Flood Reduction Project was the SRF fund, or the SRF loan program. And there is a debt service payment due of $810,000. And in June, the revenue bond that went to purchase of that property is $131,000. So just in those outstanding obligations over the next several months, that results in obligations of $2.56 million. And that is where we came up with the fund balance, or the request for a $3 million loan in order to cover these obligations, as well as any emergencies that may take place, or operating expenses until it is repaid.
So as we talked about last couple weeks ago, we do have a solution here. The recommendation that we're proposing is the interfund loan from the sewer enterprise fund to the storm drainage fund of $3 million, covers the short-term obligations, also covers those invoices from 2025 agreements with Mile High Flood, which then creates the matching funds from Mile High Flood. When we do all this, we are able to borrow from the sewer fund because the sewer fund is healthy right now, and even with this borrowing, we anticipate that we'll still have a fund balance in excess of $10 million, which, as we look at our long-term capital, is a capital plan, is how we smooth out the capital expenditures for largely South Platte Renew, but also other sewer related charges. So as we move forward, there's a significant amount of efforts that goes into forecasting and making sure that what we're actually going to utilize this loan for in the short term is adequate enough to bridge us to that funding that we're working with Mile High Flood on, which is that $8 million returning back to us. And so they have the Mile High Flood has a series of steps that start this month with their board meeting to approve this concept and the setting aside of the funds that are at Mile High Flood, so that as we move through the next steps of an IGA and then ultimately send them an invoice for that amount coming back, we anticipate that to be right around $8 million. So there are still steps along the way that need to occur for this to get us to that $8 million fund transfer, we think in the May timeframe. But this is really the first critical step to allowing us to continue to maintain the Stormwater Enterprise Fund and the charges associated. So I can't see what slide's up right now, but if it's the solutions moving forward slide, is that the slide that's up?
Yes.
Okay. So if you look at some of the what we've done is we've reorganized stormwater under utilities, and where there's a synergy of management with the enterprise funds essentially function as a singular business unit where all the expenses in and all the expenses out are tracked in one single model, as opposed to being in several different financial locations, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's all tracked and modeled in one location, so we can see everything that's coming in, everything that's coming out, and making sure that we're accounting for everything. We have a master plan that's underway that will then lead to the further refinement and development of a long-term financial model for stormwater. We'll be coming back to council later this year with the results of that master plan and the financial model, and talk about what the future of the fund looks like, independent of the short-term loan and that funding that comes back from Mile High Flood. We're going to continue to look for other opportunities through Mile High Flood to access more funding, and then ultimately, like I said, from a timing perspective, when that money comes back in, we think around the May timeframe, we would expect that this loan would be repaid in about July of 2026. So that's what we talked about last week. So now we're going to move into some of the questions that were raised last week, and then answer those step by step to address the questions that were raised in first reading. And I think first up on that is Director Ingalls again.
So on this slide, we went back and produced a summary of the financial results or from operations and from capital starting back in 2018. So you'll see there on the right side, we've got a financial statement there for you. Total revenues for that 8-year period were about $22.5 million. Operating expenses for that same time frame were about $16.3 million for an operating surplus of about $6 million. And then you'll see on the bottom section of that report is the capital. We had capital spending of about $43 million, and we borrowed just under $36 million. So that's a deficit from capital of about $7 million. Those two together with the operations and the capital had a net drawdown on the fund of just about $1 million. Now, going back to 2018, the fund only started with just a little over $1 million in available funds. Also part of that $43 million capital, there were 3 unplanned emergencies. Between the 3 of those are about $1.7 million that were not part of any of the planning either. I believe Director Rochelle is back up for the next slide. I'm going to talk about internal controls.
Thank you, Director Ingalls. So as we look at internal controls that were in place over the last few years, specific to Public Works, each project manager is responsible for their project budgets. We touched on earlier that projects generally came within budget with some contingencies, so those are monitored weekly by project managers. We also hold in Public Works monthly division meetings, whether that's engineering or operations, traffic engineering, etc., checking those budgets both on the capital side as well as general fund. We also conduct quarterly financial reviews with the finance department, both again looking at those general fund and capital expenditures. Next, quarterly financial reviews with internal, this is internal to Public Works, managers, supervisors, and all staff associated working on said projects. And then we do our annual budgeting process, both in coordination with finance, city council, budget advisory committee, and the other appropriate committees. With respect to finance, finance also does continuous budget and actual spending monitoring. That's layers on top of the processes that the department has. They also have those joint quarterly meetings that I touched on where we meet and go over every single line item. And then again, the annual budgeting process where all departments come together, working in collaboration with both the committees and city council. Hand it over to Peter. Peter, can you see the slide online?
Yeah, so I've got yeah, I can see it. So as we move over, as we move the stormwater enterprise fund over into utilities, I know that as we've talked about the sewer enterprise fund and the water enterprise fund, we've put this slide up before, but this is essentially how we move through the process of determining what the needs are, how those needs are funded, and ultimately what the recommendations to council are for rate increases and the annual budgets that we propose. And so the main tools you see that listed there is, so we have a 20-year financial planning model, which we are building for the stormwater fund right now. We have quarterly forecasting tools that we use. We have the annual budgeting process where we add to we complement the city's budget process with the enterprise fund specific budget process that we've layered on some additional steps to ensure that we have our line items correct as we plug those into the city's budget process. One of the most important things that we've developed is a monthly cash flow model, and that helps us understand what cash is actually expected to be in the fund balance or in the bank at the times that certain charges hit. This is when we're looking at year-over-year budgets, the timing of when some of those expenses hit is important as it relates to whether we receive the revenue, because sometimes the revenue comes later in the year or it comes throughout the course of the year. And if we have a heavy expense early on in the year, we need to know from a cash flow perspective that the fund balance is set up in order to be able to accommodate that. And I think, that's somewhat what we're experiencing now, is that there's a cash flow issue here, and we have these monthly cash flow models set up for water and sewer, and we'll also have the same thing set up for the storm drainage fund as well. We've developed a significant number of standard operating procedures, several of which are around the financials of the enterprise funds, and then ultimately general ledger management that occurs. And so to get into the more of the specifics in the utilities internal controls, I'm going to turn this back over to Deputy Director Stone, because she's going to walk through the actual screenshot examples of what these tools are as we use them to financially plan for the enterprise funds.
Okay, so I will mention I have a slide for each one of these bullet items here, and these are representative screenshots. They were taken, at a point in time. There are several lines of code, and most of them are Excel-based scenarios where we can toggle things on and off. So these are representative. They aren't meant to show anything exact in any of these screenshots that I'll show tonight. So the basis for our financial planning is the 20-year financial model. So we take each enterprise fund and look at all of the cash flow coming in and all of the expenses going out, and it is contained in those enterprise fund funds. So all water rates coming in, all water capital, all water O&M, that is all put into this 20-year financial model where we can project into the future what the revenue requirements are, how that might impact rates, long-term O&M budgets. We can look at different scenarios and understand, if there's some kind of expected large increase in O&M, specifically like chemicals. That's one where we really take a look at that inflationary factor over time, because it can have a big effect on what rates need to be for moving forward in future years. We can also take a look at, using this model, scenarios for financing options. So if there's the need to finance capital through an SRF loan or through WIFIA, this is an example of the sewer fund. So down in the lower right-hand corner, you can see the borrowing snapshot, and that shows the darker bars are WIFIA borrowing. So we're doing that right now. You all have seen that kind of plan for using WIFIA over the next couple of years. And then you can see as the capital plan increases, there will be potentially a need for additional borrowing. So that is how we use the 20-year financial plan, and really use that as a basis for the strategy over the next several years. We have started to build that for the stormwater fund. Our initial focus is in the near-term 5-year period. So you'll see on the lower left-hand side, the operating fund chart there, it does show that it goes negative based on the current fund balance, the projected capital spending that was budgeted, as well as operating expenses. So we zoomed in between the 2026 and 2032 time frame, because that's really where we're focusing our efforts at the moment to fix this particular situation. But we do have, we will fill in once the master plan is complete. We'll put in the CIP funding needs and see what impacts that might have on the stormwater fund over the next 20 years. So to touch on our annual budgeting process, as Director Van Rij indicated, we add an additional step because we do have to report and present our budgets as we are developing them to the Water and Sewer Board in advance of coming to the council to present that. So we've developed an internal utilities budget calendar. This is really to define these internal milestones from a department's perspective that make sure that any staff that's responsible for a budget line item is well aware of the timing for budget, the budget milestones throughout the year. And so no one's caught off guard by what it is that we're doing. And in addition to the budget calendar, we, and this was developed initially through the South Platte Renew budgeting process, and we have adopted it as well, which is a budget preparation sheet. So the budget prep sheet, there is a single sheet for every single water or sewer fund line item, so expense or capital. And we assign those sheets to either a supervisor or a manager or a deputy director that is responsible for that line item. And they have to take a look at what's been spent previously in this line item, what they project might be spent over the next year, and provide justification for any changes to that budget, whether up or down. And then once those budget prep sheets are reviewed by the supervisor or manager, that then comes to the deputy directors. We review that with staff. We go through each line item, make sure we agree with the justification that's been put in place. And this is capital and operations. And then we set a final meeting with Director Van Rye, where we run through each one of these sheets, provide the justification, and he sees what that budget is projected to be or what we would request for the next budget year. So we've already started this process for 2027. We will take this same methodology and apply it to the stormwater fund. So we've already begun to develop budget prep sheets for each of the line items in the stormwater fund as well. So how we manage the spending throughout the specific budget year, there's several tools that we use to do that. The first is a quarterly forecasting tool. So again, each line item in the budget gets this line that we show here. So I have basically 3 line items shown. These are capital line items in the water budget. So the raw water supply system, there's several capital projects rolled up into that. A good example of this one for 2026 is the City Ditch Piping Project. And so you'll see at the very top under Q1, there's some red numbers across the top. Those are our projections, basically the project manager's understanding of the project schedule, expenditures that are outstanding, any equipment or materials that they know the contractor might buy. That can just show them the fluctuations of how that spending is planned throughout the year. So we do these quarterly forecasting meetings the month before the next quarter. So this was all done in December for the first quarter of 2026. In March, we will get started on quarter 2, where we will take actuals from January and February, put that into this model, then take a look again where it says Q2, you'll see those red cells. That's where we will have the project managers or whoever's in charge of that line item fill that in. And it really helps us understand for each quarter where there could be issues. If there's a project that, is either slowing down or speeding up, it gives us an idea of how we think each of those budget line items will be impacted. So a good example of an operations line item where this is important is bulk chemicals. So as you can imagine, in the summertime when demand is up, there's more production of water that's needed, therefore more chemicals. So we try and look at that curve over time to plan when those expenditures would come. So then taking the quarterly forecasting numbers, those flow in directly into our cash flow model. And this is some example screenshots of the sewer fund monthly cash flow model. What this does is gives us a full picture of, okay, we've done the forecasting, we know the budget, we know what maybe we've spent to date. What does that look like from a fund balance perspective on a monthly basis? And it allows us to project that out. And one of the reasons we put this in place is, as you'll recall, with the WIFIA loan, we can draw that down as needed. So one of the reasons we do that is because we are able to save on interest costs. Interest aren't accrued until we pull down funds. So we put this in place to really understand when might that fund dip down to a point that we want to make sure that we have a WIFIA draw in place. So that's what this tool does for us. We've started implementing some graphics. These are just, again, examples of a scenario, but this is where we can determine, like we have said, that if we take the loan from the sewer fund of $3 million, we can project forward that fund balance will not dip below $10 million given the information that we pull in from the quarterly forecasting, as well as the revenue projection over time. And I will say that for the sewer fund, South Platte Renew also does the quarterly forecasting, and they provide that forecasting to the city of Englewood and the city of Littleton every quarter so that we can put that into our models. And so finally, I'll just touch on the SOP program and the general ledger management. So every month when the finance department quote unquote closes the month so that all charges have been accounted for, my staff will go through and just take a look at the budget performance sheet and see if anything looks out of whack. If it looks like something may have been coded wrong, we do get these instances, especially with P cards. So utility staff has a split between some of salaries and benefits get pulled out of the water fund, some out of the sewer fund. So each one of us that are in the utilities department have a certain split. And so that needs to be accounted for when there's maybe a P card purchase. A lot of that is confusing for someone who is, purchasing a piece of equipment that may or may not fall under the water fund, might need to fall under water and sewer. So we just make sure that those are getting coded and accounted for correctly. If we do see something that seems amiss, we will research it and get it corrected as quickly as possible. And as far as our SOP program, last year, the utilities department made a very concerted effort to add to the number of SOPs that we had in place, and we developed 108 SOPs. We are continuing to develop them. There's about 20 that are related to the financial management or project controls within the utilities department. This screenshot on the left just shows a list of several that we have in place. So I'll just call out a few that are related to project controls. So there's the procedure for the on-call engineering tracking Excel files, project closeout and final acceptance, a procedure for WIFIA quarterly reporting for project managers, and finally the water and sanitary sewer model updates. So that's where we've listed out how we would make updates to the financial planning model. So these controls are in place. The SOP program is very closely tracked with, authors are assigned, there's due dates, there's dates by which the author would have to review. We give about 6 months for SOPs that may change over time. There's a 6-month review period. For others that might not change as often, there's a annual review period. And then each of these SOPs then get floated up to the deputy director, where myself or Deputy Director Josh Roach will sign off.
I think so in closing, this is our last slide, but just wanted to close that we understand and appreciate the concern from council as to how we got here and the frustration with what it takes to solve this problem. I think the thing that we're optimistic about is that we believe we have a good set of actions that will stabilize this fund and actually set it up to be very healthy into the future, unlock some additional funding that we weren't expecting with the partnership with Mile High Flood, and then ultimately set it on a foundation that's built on the controls and the uniqueness of the enterprise funds that's similar to the Water Enterprise Fund and the Sewer Enterprise Fund. And I think one of the most important realizations as we've been going through this that helped me understand where maybe some of the challenge was is when we look at the water fund, it's that the thing I started off with is all the inputs and outputs, all the expenditures and the revenues are all contained in one model and one system. And by doing that same thing with the stormwater fund, we'll be able to get all the revenues and all the expenditures in this one system again, where we can see it more holistically than I think where maybe that was some of the challenge as it was mixed in. It was adjacent to the general fund in terms of how it was how the systems manage a general fund, and so when you look at the 3 enterprise funds for the utilities and South Platte Renew, it totals I think in 2026 budgets it totals just over $110 million, and so that's why we have spent so much time over the last few years developing these controls that we have in place, because it is a significant amount of funds that have varying cash flows and large projects and timing of those projects, such that when we make those those budgets and then ultimately expend those budgets through the course of the year, we want to make sure that we understand how that money is being spent through the course of the year, not just in unique snapshots that are only a couple times a year. So all the tools allow us to have really good insight and visualization into what's going on with the fund on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week, month-to-month, and ultimately year-over-year perspective. And that's what will bring the Stormwater Enterprise Fund into to match those same models that the water and the sewer enterprise fund have been successfully utilizing for the past several years. I think that's the end of our presentation, and I believe there's a question slide, and so that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you, Director Van Rye, Deputy Director Stone, Director Ingalls, and Director Rochelle. We'll open it up for questions, but first I will turn the gavel over to the mayor. You want me to keep running it? Okay. All right, but now I got somebody keeping an eye on me, making sure everybody was anyway already. All right, moving on to questions. I see Member Russell is ready for questions.
I want to thank you all very much for the presentation. I still have some questions. It's not that, the truth is, I understand very well that the utilities department understands and knows how enterprise funds work. I am very well aware that you can handle this, and this whole plan was laid out is how we're going to get out of this. But I don't feel like there's been openness and transparency about how we got into this problem. Even in the answer on the overview of the stormwater drainage fund depletion, all the years were lumped together. If you would have put them in 2019, 2020, 2021, 22, 23, we could see where the breakdown occurred. And obviously, you should know where the breakdown occurred. And I'm a little bit concerned. I think, this is my personal opinion, that you all knew, including the utilities department, by August or September, that we were in deep trouble. And yet council was given none of that information. We're just coming forward. Matter of fact, we passed a budget that's not correct. You want to know what it says, the money that's available in the stormwater fund for 26? The beginning balance. Does anybody have any idea how much it is? $9,670,000, 317. And you're saying as of November, we only had 2 million. There was a breakdown before this. How we're going to get out of it, this council is going to have to decide. But if you all are not open and transparent with us about how we got here, you're just going to, oh, we'll trust you. How do we know this is the only $7 million that's missing out of the budget?
Mayor Pro Tem, I can start that. We were much more detailed in the council request. I think you really saw highlights tonight of how we got here. And I think with the exception of some personnel issues of people losing loved ones during this time, we could not be more transparent. We can go into more details, but with the exception of literally people losing family members who were in charge of all of these projects, we've tried to be as transparent as we can. If there are any of those bullets or any of the points in the council request talking about the breakdowns that occurred that we can expound on, we absolutely can.
Then is it possible to get a breakdown of all of these same things in this overview of the stormwater drainage fund depletion by year, rather than having all 6 or 7 years lumped together?
Yes, absolutely. And we did that work. We just summarized it to give you just the highlights. But the work is done. It's there in that same spreadsheet. We can certainly provide that.
I appreciate that. My next question is, and I have more questions, but when does this money need to be appropriated in order for us not to default on the first payment that's due?
Yeah, I can answer that one, or sir. So we have invoices in hand right now that from Mile High Flood, which is $775,000, that were for 2025 invoices that we need to pay, and if this passes this evening, we will get those paid ASAP tomorrow or this week. The reason that's important from a timing perspective is we are working with them to bring that 8 million plus or minus back, and their meeting is in the end of February. And so what we want to make sure that they have, as they're proposing it to their board, is a fully paid up city of Englewood of our invoices to Mile High Flood, so that when they put together the full matching amount, which is 50%, it is a 50% that has been contributed by an Englewood and 50% that has been contributed by Mile High Flood. If we don't pay those invoices before that occurs later on this month, then that other 775,000 is at risk because Mile High Flood can't fund the match can't exceed 50%. And so if we don't provide the 775, then they can't match that 775. It puts that $750,000 at risk. So the reason why we brought this as an emergency is so we can pay those invoices ASAP after council approval, if you choose to approve it, so then that unlocks the next set of steps to make sure that we can maximize the return of revenue to the city. And like I said, we're anticipating that to be $8 million. There's still a series of things that need to occur along the way to get us to that point, but this is one of the most critical steps to ensure that we don't lose in excess of $750,000 of money that would come back to the city.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I'm going to say that I am highly offended at your response, Mr. Lewis. I wasn't asking for personal information. I wasn't asking for excuses. I'm asking for answers. We're talking about citizens' money, millions of dollars of money. And how do we know that this is all it is?
As I said, Member Russell, we're glad to expound on any of the failures that we've identified and where that went, we went wrong with the system. And I think you've asked another question that we didn't really answer tonight in the previous meeting, which was why was it ever moved out of utilities to begin with? And putting you on the spot, Director Van Rye, but can you explain the situation we found ourselves in 2019?
Yeah, I think the issue with the best way I can describe how when we were looking at this in early 2020 actually is when this occurred, was somewhat of a divide and conquer. So if you recall, in 2020, that's when my role changed through an agreement, an MOU with the city of Littleton to have my role be 50% Director of South Platte Renew and 50% Director of Utilities. Well, as we've talked about over the last 5+ years, in early 2020, the water fund was in as dire condition as the sewer enterprise fund and the stormwater enterprise fund. And so there's been a significant amount of growth and development and effort put into stabilizing that water enterprise fund, which is why when we were talking about what's the best way to address the fact that there were all three of the enterprise funds had been largely underfunded for decades. The public works director at the time, who had experience with stormwater, said that she would take the stormwater fund and then we'd move the water and the sewer fund keep that in utilities and then put it in that divided role. If we fast forward 6 years, the water and the sewer fund are really stable. the stormwater fund executed a tremendous amount of work that was required, and the citizens are benefiting from. And now we're at this point where the financial controls that we've built over time in the utilities department makes sense from just a consistency perspective to apply to the stormwater fund, to ensure that we have moving forward that foundation for and that long-term financial model that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. I just have one other comment. In the beginning of this, it says that the stormwater fee in 2019 was $4.16 per quarter. We did approve increases, and I will tell you what the stormwater fee is on my bill as of the last bill, $22.63 a month. And so we're looking at massive increases. My question is, there were some projects, sure, we had cost overruns, but you know, when Maria DeAndrea was here and we had the sinkholes and things like that, we called emergency meetings. It was the council that decided to expend emergency funds. It wasn't staff that just went forward with it. Council had to approve it. I think we approved budget supplementals, but I don't know that we've ever been told we've gone over. So I'm going to let some other council members ask some questions also. Thank you.
If I could just jump in on the funding of the rate. I think the $4.16 per quarter was, if you recall, when we were looking at the water and the sewer rates, we had a similar problem where they'd gotten so far behind and so low that the catch up has been significant over the last 6 or 7 years. So at $4.16 a quarter, that essentially generates about $15,000 a month. You can't actually operate the stormwater enterprise fund at $15,000 a month, but it was barely hanging on until that point in time where that first master plan, that first financial model was done. And so, to compare, so we're at $22 a month. To compare to our peers around us, our information is for 2025 rate in Denver is $27.49 a month, and so we're in that same range. We're actually still somewhat more affordable than what we see in some of these other older, well-established communities that have the same kind of infrastructure challenges that we have. There's been somewhat of a correction over the last, I'd say, decade to 15 years from a stormwater perspective, because there was just such an underfunding of all stormwater systems. So we look at this every year as it relates to what are the charges that we're charging for all three utilities, and then we compare them to the best of our ability to our adjacent communities to make sure that we don't end up significantly out of whack as it relates to what the surrounding communities are paying. And so I hope that helps to expand upon why things have changed so much over the last 6 years from a funding perspective.
Thank you, Director Van Ryn. We'll go to Member Prang and then Mayor Sierra.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So first off, a few comments, and then I do have a couple of questions. I think that will be quick. I do appreciate some of the questions and clarity that Member Russell has asked for. I also want to reiterate her gratitude for the solutions for moving forward. I think there's been so much thoughtfulness in planning of how to use existing systems and tools for this enterprise fund to make sure we don't land in this spot again. As much as we may need to dig into the forecasting and what measures we're using for that. I guess another comment to that end is when we're looking for answers on how did we get here, and we're looking at financials, I do highly recommend that we not do a summary level look at that. It's a significant amount of money, and we're having to come up with some really creative answers to get us to a place where we can move forward effectively. And so I just do think it justifies just giving all the detail whether we want it or not. And I appreciate that you already have that ready for us. So thank you for that. My two questions are, first of all, a question for Director of Public Works. During the time where the Stormwater Division was shifted over to Public Works and created, and there was discussion in one of the slides about that being a challenging time to like manage the capital budget increases that occurred within your department. At that time, did you feel the ability to ask for what you needed for staffing? Did you ask for additional staffing? Just talk to us a little bit. For me, that's a systemic piece of what happened here. And I want to make sure that, as we're problem solving and looking back at how did we get here and also how we're moving forward, that we don't have departments that are overburdened and that we do have the ability to make that ask and bring those asks forward to council.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember, for the question. So I think the response is multifaceted. It's my understanding that there were some conversations that I was not part of where some opportunities for financial modeling were discussed with various staff members in Public Works from other departments and were not taken advantage of, which is extremely unfortunate. I will also say that before my arrival, it's my understanding that Deputy City Manager Dodd recognized the need for a business services division within the department. So we started moving in that direction shortly after my arrival as well. We had a vacancy in, I believe it was like mid to late 23, or excuse me, it could have been early 24. We were able to fill that and start moving towards the creation of a business services division within Public Works. That said, the individuals that we have in place and are working to train up have a lot of growth opportunity to catch up with the experience that we see within the utilities department.
Okay. I appreciate that answer. I just encourage our departments moving forward when we're looking at the attractiveness of grants, which will be my next question, but not for you. That we take into consideration those staffing needs, and something may look really attractive to us, but if we don't have the ability to manage it well, we need to make wise decisions around that. And not to say that we're not trying to do that, but just always keeping that in the back of our head. So I appreciate your multifaceted answer.
Yeah, no, again, thank you for the question. And I think, that's a spot on observation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my next question for utility staff, moving forward and to the whole point about, I think sometimes we end up with projects coming forward to us for approval that did land here at the time that they landed here because there was a grant available. And so with your tools of forecasting and kind of looking at the quarterly information and the monthly information, I didn't really see a clean fit around how we can take into consideration whether or not to go after a grant and whether that particular, the timing of grants, especially if it has a match requirement, but even if it doesn't, but would drive unanticipated financial obligations, how do we build that into the forecasting?
Sure. So and I'll use the water fund as an example of that. We actually did that for funding the lead service line program. So with the SRF loan that we did receive, there were federal funds that was tied to the bipartisan infrastructure bill that allowed communities to take some portion of principal forgiveness, so similar to grant funds. So what we did in that instance is understood what it was that we'd be taking on as far as an obligation, And for us to receive that $10 million in principal forgiveness from the $40 million that we received for the SRF loan program, is we ran that through that 20-year financial model. So we made sure that we could take on the additional debt service that was tied to that piece of principal forgiveness, and it would work with the revenue requirements already understood by our capital planning and projects already in place. And we made sure that we would not exceed or I guess deplete our ability to pay that debt service. So we look at that debt service coverage ratio and ensure that that's remained intact through that entire loan period. Because as you recall with WIFIA, that is a delayed repayment. However, the SRF, we start paying on immediately. So we needed to take a look through that 20-year financial model and make sure that we could cover that additional debt obligation with the rates and fees that we had in place. That was one of the reasons that we came to council in 2024 and asked for a $5 a month fee to be added to the water fund or the water bill to cover a portion of that debt service payment. But again, that analysis allowed us to unlock $10 million in principal forgiveness while advancing the lead reduction program that at that time was only funded about $1 million per year and will roughly be a $30 million program.
Mm-hmm. So my head's trying to
There's
follow
another
everything that
piece
you
to
just.
that too.
Go ahead, Director Van Ray.
I'm sorry. There's another piece of that too, which is the staffing piece. And so a large program like that requires a lot of resources from a staffing perspective to execute. And that's why we put out an RFP for a program manager who essentially Sarah has one program manager person with Hazen and Sawyer who handles the increased staffing that would come with the lead program on its own. We can't ramp up staffing for a program like that, because when it's done after 3 years, we'll have all these extra people. By using a program management model, we are able to access all the resources within a consulting firm for that short period of time, and that goes into the overall cost of that program. And so that 40 million funds that program management piece, which is how we can actually execute it from a staffing perspective as well. Thank you for letting me add that.
That's okay. I appreciate that additional information. So when we're using the 20-year model, can you see within the structure of that tool sooner than 5 years out? So I think I was asking, about the quarterly and monthly insight into things, because how do we head things off? And so how detailed do you get, and are like timelines for things plugged into that analysis that happens? So it's capturing both the numbers piece of it, but also the timing piece of it. And within the 20-year look, like, are we able to clearly see within a year whether we're heading toward trouble or not? Because 20 years is a long amount of time. It didn't take us 20 years to get to the spot that we're at right now. So how do we prevent that?
Sure. So the 20-year really allows us to take that step back and look at it from a holistic point of view, look at the fund from a holistic point of view. So that is, while that is used to develop or give us essentially guidelines for budgeting for maybe that next year, that is what that tool is used for. And so we run scenarios where we're able to toggle things on and off, whether it's funding or rate increases or increases in capital, a different capital plan. We can do that all in that context of that model. So then when we look at the other tools that we have in place, from a water and sewer perspective, we are essentially already know what those capital projects are going to be. And getting those things up and running does take quite a bit of time. So the budget is set when it's approved by council. We take that and we run through all those projects that are in place. We use that quarterly forecasting tool with the project managers to say, okay, is this project running on time? If so, when do you expect these certain large expenditures to hit? We put that in, and what it does show us over that budget year perspective is really that timing from, okay, it's like a line or a box vertical line in one of the graphs from the 20-year financial model, but we'd take a very deep dive into a quarterly look and a monthly look in those other tools. But all of that is set by the budget that we bring before Water Sewer Board and the council to get approved on an annual basis. If we start seeing things, say we're getting closer to the end of the year, and this actually happened, I believe it was last year, maybe it was in 2024, where a capital project it was a timing thing. So it was budgeted for 2024. There were delays in getting several things moving, and we brought a budget supplemental to council to move those funds basically from the previous year into the next year so that timing, that the delayed timing in executing that project was accounted for. So that happens as soon as we see there's some type of problem, and that's what that monthly cash flow model can help us do,
Okay.
along with the quarterly.
So that's for things that are budgeted and already approved in the budget. I think what I'm getting at more is so something else comes along that's not already in the budget and approved. Are you you're confident that what's already approved in the budget and the forecasting and kind of looking at the overall health of the fund over time would be able to more accurately inform whether we should pursue a particular grant opportunity for a capital improvement project?
Correct. And so we would take a look at if there is a project or something that comes available to us, we would make those adjustments. We would we'd come back to the council and say, this is the option, this is what is before us and what we could do, or we're making other decisions on other projects, whether that's delaying something that we had previously planned for a project that might have more need, or a funding mechanism that we could put in place. We would use those tools to do that analysis.
Okay. That's all very helpful.
Can I add to that response?
Yes.
So one of there's two examples that come to mind on that. So for the sewer fund for South Platte Renew, we know we have Regulation 31, which is driving down our phosphorus and nutrient treatment requirements that we anticipate right now what could cost us in excess of $100 to $200 million in changes to the way the plant operates in the late 2030s timeframe. And so we want to model out the 20 years so that we at least acknowledge that we know we have this thing coming. Now we have 10 or 15 years. We've been planning for this for the last 8 years. So we use that to be able to plan for the timing of when we're spending that money, because what we want to do is we want to spend the right money on the right thing at the right time. If we can get visibility out into that 20-year window of what some of these larger indicating things are, then that helps us plan over time because we know we have something big coming. The other thing that, on the water side, we've planned for the capital program that we have that meets the master planning needs as we've presented them to council to provide a level of service that is updating our system. One of the things that's not included in any of those models is if some kind of new regulation comes down related to PFAS. And so that would be one of those things that comes out of nowhere, which we can't really plan for right now because we don't know to what degree there might be regulations that require substantially improved treatment, changes, things like that. So one of the ways that we help to make sure that we're ready for something like that is we pay attention to our debt coverage ratios. And what we try not to do is max out our debt issuance, because if some surprise comes along that we need to factor in over the next 5 years that we weren't planning for, by having that capacity to issue additional debt, which we have in the water fund, that allows us to respond to those types of situations as they come up. And so that's just a couple of examples of how that longer range issues drive how we look at the model and pay attention to debt coverage ratio and timing and all those kinds of things.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your answers.
Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. First off, I want to echo Member Prang's comment in response to Member Russell's comment about detailed information. Since it does sound like you had to put together that information to begin with, we all consume data differently, but in order to get to the point that Member Russell was stating in terms of transparency and just understanding year by year how we got to this point, it's always best to err on that side when providing us detailed information. I guess my first question. Interesting. Let's see if this one. Let's try again. Can you hear me? Okay, I think it's working. All right, let's see if this is working better. No? This one's been working. So I guess my first question to you, Director Stone or Deputy Director Stone, on the slide that speaks to, it was one of the picture slides, the initial stormwater financial model. I wasn't sure if you were stating that these were one of the slides that we shouldn't take verbatim, potentially.
So I don't think you need to take any of these verbatim. Again, it's just a snapshot in time. There's various things that are toggled on and off, and this was just taken for demonstration purposes.
Okay, well, the reason why I was asking is one of the questions that I've had about this whole situation since we first heard about it was whether or not that there were any future obligations that we were unaware about. So when I was looking at the slide, I was looking at the operating fund. And I was just kind of curious, due to the situation that we're in, are there any projects or any maintenance that we will be foregoing based on the situation we're in? Because I know that we used to vacuum out the gravel out of the storm drainage pipes, those type of things that we did early on. Is that something that we potentially may be impacting based on where we're at today?
So our plan is to continue those maintenance operations. And in fact, those maintenance operations have been absorbed into utilities, distribution, and collections staff. So there's staffing in place to take on some of that operations and maintenance needs that were already in place. There's now just a bigger staff to handle that.
All right, thank you. And then I guess my second question, my last question on the item, you did a very good job of explaining what we're foregoing if we happen to not approve the transfer loan this evening. I guess one question that I happen to have, because I know that eventually we're going to have to go out for bonding at some point in the future for other projects or stormwater projects. Will our bond rating be impacted by not paying the obligations that we have at this point, potentially?
So I would have to ask Director Ingalls to step up and talk exactly of what may happen if that's the case.
If I understand the question correctly, the answer is yes. It would definitely negatively impact if we don't pay our obligations.
Okay.
To what impact, I couldn't tell you until we're going out again for bonding to see that impact.
Right. Okay. When was the last time we did a bonding, or what's our bond rating?
We are AA-, which is the second highest that you can get.
All right. All right. Those were my two questions. Thank you very much, Director Engel. Do you want me to take over, or?
Yeah, go ahead, because I'm not sure these mics are that.
Right. Okay. All right. Any further questions for members of council? Go ahead, Member Russell.
the question that I have now, because I've just been thinking about this. So the water rate and the sewer rate went up 4.5% per year, starting in, I believe, was 2019, and the stormwater increased 5%. So those have been going up equally. Is the difference the Whiffian loan that we have taken out, and are we able to meet the obligations of the Whiffian loan by those current raises, 4.5% per year? I mean, is that the difference in why the stormwater is somewhat underfunded?
I think one of the keys to those we started that process in 2020 is through the summer of 2020 is when we were making those substantial changes to how the water utility was funded. And yes, we put in place a standard rate increase of 4.5% per year. But if you recall, we were talking about the fact that there was the massive underfunding of the infrastructure and the infrastructure need. And so that's when we actually instituted and created that capital investment fee, which started out at $15 a month. And so that's dedicated to fixing the water system. And that goes up by $1 every other year. Additionally, when we did get the opportunity for the drinking water loan, we looked at how all of that debt factored into our financial model, which is why we brought forward that $5 fee that coincides with just that loan. So as soon as it doesn't go up, it stays $5 all the way through the life of the loan. At the end of the loan, it is intended to sunset that fee. So that would be 28 years from now. But I think the 4.5% was on that usage rate, but we added those fixed fees because we needed some kind of a determinate funding that was dedicated to infrastructure investment, because we were just facing so many challenges from an infrastructure perspective. The stormwater fund didn't do a similar kind of capital investment fee that I'm aware of.
Okay, I appreciate that. And so when we get the $8 million back, we'll pay off the loan, the temporary loan. What do we intend to do with the rest of that? I want to make sure that whatever happened here isn't going to penalize the ratepayers down the road. I want to make sure we're spending the rest of that money wisely, although it's putting us in a hole when we have a stormwater issue that needs to be addressed, like upsizing the pipes or more things like that, because now we'll be $8 million behind. So what is the $8 million intended to do?
I think what the $8 million does, and why what actually this does is actually it helps not have some kind of a immediate rate increase needed for the stormwater fund for our ratepayers. It is funding that has been sitting in these escrow accounts, or in these accounts at Mile High Flood, that is dedicated to the city of Englewood. And so by bringing it back into the City of Englewood Enterprise Fund, essentially what it does is it goes into the fund balance of the enterprise fund. So it can't be used for anything other than stormwater related projects. But instead of starting that financial modeling process and that plan with the new master plan from a point of zero or an interfund loan, additional interfund loan debt, it actually gives us the opportunity to start from a fund balance that's healthy enough to be able to start to look at how we year over year incrementally make improvements to the storm drainage fund in a way that doesn't require these substantial huge projects like South Englewood flood reduction, but do make incremental year over year investments in the stormwater fund within the current balance of that stormwater fund itself. Now, when we do the master plan, we might identify some significant investment that we might want to do, you know, in the next 5 years or 7 years or something like that, which may require us to issue more debt in order to do that. But until that time, we wouldn't know that until we have the master plan. We discuss that with council, talk about the level of service and the projects that we can incrementally provide over time. This money that comes back essentially gives us a good starting point fund balance to be able to do that.
Thank you. And I just have one comment for you, Director Van Rye. I was incredibly disappointed when it probably was October that we approved, it was either October or November, that we approved the $775,000. And then all of a sudden the next month we're in trouble. And it troubled me that we did it on purpose, and I felt like the Water and Sewer Board was misled at that time. So I just want to tell you that. Thank you for this. I appreciate it.
Any further questions from members of council? All right. Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11B2?
So moved.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you very much, Member Praying. Any further comments? Go ahead, Member Russell.
This gives me incredible heartburn. I know where we're at right now, but I am tired of this council being misled and it not being open and transparent to us. I am going to approve this, but I am incredibly frustrated. And I hope that if there's another problem coming, that this council will find out before we get to this point. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Russell. Anyone else with comments? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much to staff for all the work that's been put into this over the last couple of weeks. With that, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Bethel. Can you repeat that?
Aye.
Thank you. Member Praying.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, staff. Thank you very much, Director Van Rye, for calling on that. All right. Apparently, we are now on to Mayor's Choice. Just one item for me tonight. Well, actually, two, I guess, in a sense. Thank you very much to Mayor Pro Tem for picking up for me tonight, which kind of leads me to the second item. So, unfortunately, I won't be able to make the Tri-Cities Homelessness Policy Group this coming Thursday. For my full-time job, the start of sales kickoff was today. So I will be out for the next 4 days, be back online starting Friday. But I will be reaching out to the mayors for Sheridan and Littleton to let them know that I won't be in attendance, but just the timing of it this year just did not work for my schedule. So anyone for council member's choice? Go ahead, Member Pring.
Thank you, Mayor. So given the heaviness of our conversation that we just had and the heaviness of broader things in our world these days, I wanted to bring forward something fun and show off my t-shirt that I got from Mr. Stewart over at Ink Lounge. As council members might remember, during boards and commissions interviews, he wore one of these shirts, designed the shirt. I brought my own t-shirt. I got to pull the ink. It was a really cool opportunity. Highly encourage fellow council members to pop over and have a conversation at Ink Lounge. Not only are you going to get a cool t-shirt out of it, but also get some really good insight on designs and thoughts moving forward for Cultural Arts Commission. So thank you for letting me share some positive news.
That's great news. Thank you very much, Member Pring. Anyone else for council? All right, City Manager's report.
No, or did you have that item? Okay. Deputy City Manager Dada has one item that I forgot about, and he will present that now.
Great, thank you, City Manager Lewis. So really quickly, Mayor and Council, as you hopefully saw in your packet, we are seeking your consensus to have the mayor sign a letter of interest for a grant to the state. So we met with our regional representative for the Department of Local Affairs, DOLA, a few weeks ago. He let us know about a grant program that's very broad, but it's basically for planning and things like that. And he said that he could go through the process to review and approve up to a $25,000 grant that we could use for technical assistance to help us update our EOP, which is our emergency operations plan. So the plan is expires at the end of May, and so this grant would be a huge help to me specifically, but also to us as an organization in helping us do this review. It's a pretty straightforward grant application. We just need to submit this letter. I did confer with the city attorney's office, and they suggested that if we bring it forward for you tonight and you consent to it, then we can put it in DocuSign for Mayor Sierra to sign, and we can submit it to the state this week.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director. Any questions for the Deputy Director on the grant? All right. I don't see any reservations from members of council on signing the grants. I don't see Jack online, but all right. I think we're good. Thank you very much, Deputy Director. Or sorry, Deputy City Manager. Thank you for that. Anything else for City Manager's report? All right. And with that, everyone, it is just after 9 o'clock. We are now adjourned. Everyone have a good evening. See you next Monday. Thank you.